Chapter 165. Jin Mingxin naturally knew who the Qin family's ninth-level manifestation realm martial artist that Nie Tian mentioned was. It was precisely Qin Yetian's younger brother, Qin Hongtian. Jin Mingxin even knew that Qin Yetian's eldest son, Qin Yulong, also followed Lan Binji and probably died at Nie Tian's hands without knowing why. Lan Binji, Qin Yulong, Shang Mingyu, Qin Hongtian, Fan Jinji, these 5 people, any one of them was not weak. Especially the 3 at the back, they all had strength close to giant spirit realm martial artists. But they actually all died at Nie Tian's hands. Nie Tian only had essence spirit realm strength, while the 5 people above were all manifestation realm martial artists. There were even martial artists close to giant spirit realm. This lineup, even Jin Mingxin himself would also feel that it was very troublesome. But Nie Tian did it, killing all of the pursuers instead. Even if Nie Tian said it personally, Jin Mingxin still felt that it was somewhat unreal. However, Nie Tian would not lie, and there was no need for him to show off his strength by killing people. Furthermore, in Jin Mingxin's subconscious, he felt that Nie Tian had this kind of strength. By the side, Qiushan was also stunned for a good while before saying, "Mister, did Fan Jinji also die at your hands?" Nie Tian nodded his head. He naturally would not forget Fan Jinji. He was the most troublesome among the killed. The 6-armed ferocious ape's origin spirit plus spirit array garment wasted Nie Tian's dragon raising arm astral soul before killing it. But Nie Tian also obtained a tier 3 spirit array garment. It was not considered too much of a loss. "Mister, I implicated you," Qiushan said very seriously, appearing somewhat guilty. The reason why Fan Jinji would go and kill Nie Tian was clearly because of Qiushan. Fan Jinwu and Fan Jinji, the 2 brothers, naturally framed Qiushan. Both sides had a deep enmity that would not rest until one party was dead. And Nie Tian had been helping Qiushan all along. Hence, that was why the Fan family brothers harbored killing intent towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian waved his hand, indicating that it was nothing. "Don't worry, mister. I will personally end the enmity between me and Fan Jinwu, and I will also make him confess to the mastermind who framed me." Qiushan clenched his fists, his eyes filled with anger. After Nie Tian's treatment, the injury to Qiushan's origin meridians had already healed, and his power had increased explosively. In just 4 days, his power had risen from the 1st tier of the Wanxiang Adepts to the 4th tier of the Wanxiang Adepts. He had risen by a minor tier every single day. Nie Tian had said before that the heaven and earth spiritual energy accumulated in Qiushan's Dantian for 25 years would be completely absorbed by his Yuan Meridian, so his strength would definitely skyrocket. However, Nie Tian had only thought that Qiushan's strength would rise to the giant spirit realm within a month. It seemed that his guess back then had been too conservative. With Qiushan's current explosive growth rate, he would probably be able to reach the 5th level of the giant spirit realm within a month. Although on the surface, it looked like Qiushan had advanced by 1.5 major realms in a month, he had actually spent 25 years. Both Qiushan and Nie Tian were very clear on this point. Jin Mingxin said at this time, "Mr. Nie, does anyone else know that you killed Lan Binji?" Both Qin Yetian and the Empress know. Nie Tian thought back to the scene of him meeting with the Qin siblings in the morning and couldn't help but smile. He said, "I've already met with these 2. They firmly believe that I killed Lan Binji, but I did not admit to it." Nie Tian gave a simple explanation. Of course, he didn't mention how shameless he was and how he had angered Empress Qinya to the point of insanity. "That's good." Jin Mingxi nodded. He said, "As long as Mr. Nie does not admit to it, even the imperial family will not dare to do anything to you. If they push you too far, my Blue Cloud Merchant Guild is not to be trifled with." Knowing that Nie Tian had killed Lan Binji, Jin Mingxin had already made ample preparations. If the imperial family forced him to hand over Lan Binji, he would definitely resist to the end. At that time, even if he had to borrow the power of the martial gathering and merchant guild, he would not hesitate. Nie Tian smiled faintly. He said, "President Jin, I'm afraid things won't be so simple. In my opinion, if Lan Yunhai handles this matter, even if he knows that I killed Lan Binji, he will not fall out with me. On the other hand, that empress is a bit troublesome. For the sake of her precious son, she will definitely not give up. Lan Yunhai was the emperor of the Blue Cloud Empire. Although Nie Tian had only met Lan Yunhai once, he could tell that this was a ruthless and shrewd character. Ruthlessness meant that Lan Yunhai could let go of the hatred of his son's death. Shrewdness meant that Lan Yunhai could see the situation clearly and choose to look at the big picture. Although Nie Tian did not have much power, there were many people who were willing to risk their lives for him. If the Jin father and son, Zhang Yifeng, and Qi Feng joined forces, even as the Blue Cloud Emperor, Lan Yunhai would not dare to underestimate them. Therefore, in order to stabilize the Blue Cloud Empire situation, Lan Yunhai would definitely choose to swallow his anger and even help Nie Tian eliminate the rumors in the imperial city. But Empress Qinyu was different. She was a ruthless and stupid woman. In order to take revenge for Lan Binji, she might go to the extreme. As for what Qinya's extreme would be, Nie Tian had some guesses in his heart. It was the Bloodbath Gate. Jin Mingxin had said that Qinya was the Bloodbath Gate Master's junior sister. Therefore, under the circumstances where Qinya had nowhere to go, the Bloodbath Gate was the only extreme option. If the Bloodbath Gate joined in at this time, this show would be interesting. It was already very difficult for Nie Tian to guess so much. However, he guessed wrong because the Bloodbath Gate had long joined in. Ever since Tang Yuyu assassinated Nie Tian, the Bloodbath Gate Master, Gao Jin, had been planning everything. Even this time, Lan Binji's death was certain, because even if Nie Tian didn't kill Lan Binji, Tang Yuyu would have. Killing Lan Binji was Gao Jin's second mission for Tang Yuyu. Making Tang Yuyu kill Lan Binji was naturally to frame Nie Tian. Unfortunately, before Tang Yuyu could frame Lan Binji died in Nie Tian's hands. Mr. Nie, what do you think will happen in the Imperial City next? Jin Mingxin sensed that Nie Tian had a hidden meaning in his words and couldn't help but ask. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "The Bloodbath Gate will interfere and the Imperial City will be in turmoil." The Imperial City will be in turmoil? Jin Mingxin and Qiu Shan looked at each other and were stunned at the same time. Nie Tian's expression didn't change and was still calm. He said to Qiu Shan, you will cultivate in seclusion for the next period of time. I want you to raise your strength to the giant spirit realm within half a month, and at least the giant spirit realm. Qiu Shan was stunned at first, but then he became excited and promised, "Mister, don't worry. Qiu Shan will definitely do it." Nie Tian looked at Jin Mingxin and said, "President Jin, I will also focus on cultivating. During this period of time, no matter what happens in the Imperial City, we will not ask." Jin Mingxin didn't know what Nie Tian was referring to, but he still nodded solemnly and said, "Mr. Nie, don't worry. I will strengthen the Jin residence's defenses and ensure that there are experts guarding the residence 24 hours a day." After hearing a few words from Nie Tian, Jin Mingxin suddenly felt an oppressive feeling, as if a storm was coming. Chapter 166. The Palace. The night was dark like water, and there were not many stars. Righteous Virtue Hall. Qinya knelt in the middle of the hall, sobbing and complaining. "Your Majesty, that bastard Nie Tian killed your beloved son. Are you not going to do anything and let him continue living?" On the dragon throne, Lan Yunhai's burly body moved a little, but he lay down again. Following that, a low voice sounded. "Empress Ye, I already know about Yeer's matter. I know that you are heartbroken, and I am as heartbroken as you. However, I have long warned Bing Yi not to provoke Nie Tian, but he refused to listen. I have 5 princes, and Yi, is the prince I love the most. I even thought of passing the throne to him. Unfortunately, he is too insolent and disappointed me time and time again. This time, in order to kill Nie Tian, he did not hesitate to enter the burial cloud abyss with the Qin family, to the extent that he died in the abyss. If I were Nie Tian, I would not let Bing Yi live if I had the chance." At this point, Lan Yunhai suddenly stood up, appearing very angry. he suddenly raised his voice and roared. And what disappointed me the most is that he actually mixed with the bloodbat sect. Empressya, do you dare to say that this matter has nothing to do with you? Your Majesty. Chinya's delicate body trembled, and she wailed. Her loose clothes slid down, revealing her fair skin. Lan Yunhai flicked his long sleeves and said fiercely, I told you long ago that you are not allowed to interact with the bloodbat sect. Could it be that my words were just a joke in your eyes? But you, not only did you sever ties with the bloodbat sect, but you even drag your son into it. It's all because of you, his mother, that Bingy ended up in this state. Year's death was caused by me. Chinya was stunned for a moment, her eyes revealing anger and despair. Lan Yunhai took a deep breath, seemingly tired, and did not want to be entangled with Chinya anymore. He waved his hand and said, Empressya, you can leave. I don't want to see you again. Lan Yunhai was naturally heartbroken when his beloved son died tragically. However, he was the ruler of a country, and he could not do things on a whim. Who was Nie Tian? Where did he come from? What kind of power was behind it? Lan Yunhai knew nothing about it. If he fought Nie Tian without knowing anything, he would be no different from Lan Binji, who was as stupid as his grandmother. Given Nie Tian's current reputation in the Blue Cloud Empire, the price to pay to kill him was too high. Lan Yunhai couldn't afford this price. Therefore, he could only give up and hide his hatred in his heart. If you reject me, the Blue Cloud Empire will be destroyed. Nie Tian's words echoed in Lan Yunhai's ears. How could youth with no background have such arrogant confidence? Of course not. Therefore, Lan Yunhai believed that Nie Tian was most likely a disciple of a great hidden family, and he came to the Blue Cloud Empire just to gain experience. Nie Tian's matter had to be handled carefully. If he was not careful, it could bring disaster to the Empire of Blue Cloud. Lan Yunhai would never have guessed that Nie Tian's background was him. Your Majesty. Chinya didn't retreat. Instead, she stood up, and a ruthless look flashed across her elegant face. She suddenly said, Since your Majesty is so ruthless, don't blame me for being heartless. Lan Yunhai frowned slightly, not knowing what Chinya meant. After you lost your mind. I will pretend that I didn't hear what you said just now. Lan Yunhai's body shook slightly, but he suddenly felt a subtle vibration coming from the air. He wanted to react, but it was too late. The next moment, Lan Yunhai felt dizzy. He knew something was wrong and shouted, Chinya, what did you do to me? After shouting this, Lan Yunhai's limbs became weak. He wanted to circulate his Yuan meridians, but he couldn't summon any Yuan Qi. Finally, he collapsed on the dragon throne. Chinya slowly walked to Lan Yunhai's side and said, Senior brother, Master Xiao, come out. As soon as she finished speaking, two figures slowly walked out from a dark corner of the righteous virtue hall. One of them was Xiao Luyang, and the other was the mysterious black-robed man, Bloodbat sect leader Gao Jing. Xiao Luyang, you betrayed me? Lan Yunhai's eyes widened. He couldn't believe that Xiao Luyang, who had followed him for decades, would betray him. Your Majesty, you can't blame me. This old man has served the royal family for decades. Even if I didn't make any contributions, I worked hard. But when that bastard Nie Tian appeared, just because he cured Her Highness's illness, you gave Her Highness to Zhang Yifeng to take care of. If you do this, where do you put this old man? Xiao Luyang's tone was calm, but he couldn't hide the anger in his heart. Since you don't want to kill Nie Tian, then I can only find someone who is willing to kill Nie Tian. Lan Yunhai looked at Xiao Luyang and didn't know what to say. He then looked at Gao Jing and said in shock, You are Gao Jing. Lan Yunhai, I didn't expect you to still remember an old friend. Bloodbat sect leader Gao Jing laughed and lifted his black robe, revealing a horrified face. His face looked like it had been splashed with a strong corrosive substance. His entire face was riddled with holes and covered with pustules. The larger pustules seemed to be flowing with pus. It was extremely disgusting, but the most horrifying part of his face was the middle part. Where his nose should have been, there were two black holes like a skeleton. It was a hair-raising sight. You're Gao Jing? You're not dead? Xiao Luyang was so scared that his knees gave way when he saw this face, and he collapsed to the ground. Gao Jing smiled coldly and slowly pulled up his black robe. His horrifying face was once again hidden in the darkness. Then a low and terrifying voice sounded. Lan Yunhai, Xiao Liang, we didn't expect this, right? When the Gao family was exterminated, only one person survived. Perhaps this is God's will. The Gao family was exterminated. You only have yourself to blame. Lan Yunhai roared, enduring the pain. 25 years ago, the Gao family was once one of the great families in Blue Cloud City. But in one night, the entire family was exterminated. Not even the infants were spared. The reason for the Gao family's extermination was ridiculous. Gao Jing made Lan Yunhai the cuckold. Yes, it was a murder case caused by a cuckold. At that time, Gao Jing was a young and talented man. He stole the woman that Lan Yunhai liked. Later, Lan Yunhai was enraged, and the Gao family was exterminated. The Gao family was exterminated, and only one person survived. That was the instigator of the incident, Gao Jing. After that, Gao Jing joined the Bloodbath sect and successfully became the sect master, reaching this day. I only have myself to blame? Gao Jing asked and smiled coldly. What a good only have yourself to blame. Then can I say that you also have yourself to blame today? Lan Yunhai raised his head and looked at Gao Jing. He showed some arrogance and said, Gao Jing, between you and me, it's just that the winner takes all. Falling into your hands today, I have no other request. I only hope that you will let the Lan family go. Chapter 167. Gao Jing laughed for a full minute before he finally stopped and said in a stern voice, Lan Yunhai, should I say that you're too naive? The enmity between us has never been between two people. Today, you're my prisoner, and your Lan family is doomed to be exterminated. You really won't let the Lan family go? Lan Yunhai stared blankly for a moment, his face filled with despair and pain. Let them go. Gao Jing gritted his teeth and roared. Did you ever think of letting them go when you exterminated the Gao family 25 years ago? The 413 members of the Gao family, 42 babies in swaddling clothes, all died tragically. If I let them go, who will pay for their lives? At the end of his speech, Gao Jing was already roaring fiercely like an enraged wild beast. The last glimmer of hope in Lan Yunhai's eyes disappeared and was replaced by endless despair. He glanced at Qinya, hoping that she would say something. But Qinya acted as if she didn't see it and directly ignored Lan Yunhai's gaze. Just as Tian said, Qinya went to the extreme to avenge Lan Binji. He had to admit that Tian's analytical skills were indeed formidable. In fact, this was closely related to Tian's identity in his previous life. He was the #1 war god in the heaven realm in his previous life. What he needed was not only combat power, but also a keen sense of the overall situation. How could he become the #1 war god if he couldn't figure out the situation before the war and the direction of the war? Xiao Luyang's lips quivered as if he wanted to say something. But at this time, Gao Jing suddenly punched and directly pierced Xiao Luyang's chest. Blood gushed out like a fountain. Xiao Luyang opened his mouth wide and couldn't utter a word. Xiao Luyang, you were one of the accomplices in the Gao family's matter. Do you think this king doesn't know? Gao Jing casually waved his hand, and Xiao Luyang fell heavily to the ground, turning into a corpse. Xiao Luyang, the dignified president of the Alchemist Guild who was arrogant every day, never dreamed that he would die such a tragic death. He had just been a traitor for half an hour and then died in the hands of his new master. His death was really strange. Lan Yunhai glanced at Xiao Luyang's corpse with a bit of reluctance in his eyes. Senior brother, what should we do now? Qinya calmed down and asked. Gao Jing looked at Lan Yunhai and said, He has been hit by my corpse Luo Kursgu. He will completely lose his consciousness within half a month and become my corpse Luo puppet. I'll let him announce you as the Empress of the Blue Cloud Empire. You can take revenge with your strength. Thank you, senior brother. Qin bowed. Qin was already planning. It was said that women with big breasts had no brains, and Qinya was a perfect example. Gao Jin's words could only deceive a 3-year-old child, but Qinya believed him. It could only be said that Qinya was too eager to avenge Lan Benji that she had completely lost the ability to judge. Foolish woman. Lan Yunhai cursed in his heart as he looked at the foolish Qinya. Lan Yunhai knew very well that Gao Jin was best at seducing women. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been cuckolded back then. Gao Jin's next move would definitely be to arrange for the Bloodbat sect to completely take over the Imperial Palace. Once the Bloodbat sect took over everything in the Imperial Palace, not only would the members of the royal family die, even the members of the Qin clan would suffer a calamity. Back then, the extermination of the Gao family was carried out by the Qin family. Qinya, that stupid woman, was digging her own grave. Gao Jin waved his hand, and Lan Yunhai fainted. Lan Yunhai looked at Gao Jin and roared, "Gao Jin, your plot won't succeed. I won't let this stupid woman be the empress. The Blue Cloud Empire can only be ruled by us." Oof. With a cold sneer, Gao Jin directly pushed Lan Yunhai down and sat on the dragon throne. He asked mockingly, "Do you still have a choice?" "I do. I choose death." Lan Yunhai lay on the ground and shouted. Lan Yunhai wanted to destroy his Yuan Meridian, but his expression changed. He couldn't use any elemental energy. "Do you want to die?" Gao Jin smiled coldly. "Sometimes, death needs the favor of others. I won't let you die. Corpse Luo Kursku, it's time for you to play your role." As Gao Jin's cold voice fell, Lan Yunhai immediately felt as if there were billions of little bugs wriggling crazily all over his body. Moreover, they were constantly devouring his body and soul. "Ah!" Lan Yunhai screamed like a pig being slaughtered. His face was distorted because of the pain. "Scream, scream as much as you want. The louder you scream, the more excited my corpse Luo worms are." "Ha!" Lan Yunhai screamed in pain, but Gao Jin laughed crazily. Lan Yunhai was hit by Gao Jin's corpse Luo Kursku. Corpse Luo Kursku was an evil goo technique passed down from the mini summer world's most ominous place, the land of blood massacre. The consciousness of the person hit by the goo would be devoured by the corpse Luo worms. Half a month later, they would lose their consciousness and become the puppet of the person who cast the goo. The corpse Luo Kursku's core secret was the corpse Luo worm. This was a very special goo. It was very small and couldn't be seen by the naked eye. Moreover, it was colorless and odorless. It could invade a martial artist's body and devour their blood and soul without anyone noticing. Lan Yunhai wasn't weak. He was already at the 3rd level of the giant spirit realm. However, he was tricked by Qinya. He was hit by the corpse Luo Kursku when he was defenseless and became a sheep waiting to be slaughtered. However, the breeding of the corpse Luo worm was very complicated. It had to be fed with one's own blood essence. Gao Jin cultivated the corpse Luo Kursku. His entire body was covered in corpse Luo worms. That was why his face was riddled with holes. Furthermore, his body was riddled with holes like his face. For revenge, Gao Jin was willing to sacrifice everything. 15 days. Once 15 days are over, it will be the end of Lan clan. Gao Jin's face turned sinister. He roared crazily with the hatred that he had suppressed for decades. Gao Jin controlled Lan Yunhai. His next step was to control the Imperial Palace. After that, he would get rid of everyone in Lan clan. Of course, he wouldn't let Nie Tian off. However, he didn't dare to act rashly. He had to wait until Lan Yunhai was completely under his control. Then, he would make Lan Yunhai abdicate. It would be best if this foolish woman, Qinya, could become the new empress. After all, other than the Imperial clan, Lan Yun Empire still had the Alchemist Guild, Blue Cloud Commerce, Tyrant Cloud Academy, and other organizations. Afraid of these factions, even if Gao Jin controlled the Blue Cloud Sea, he didn't dare to act recklessly. "Junior sister, I want to see Commander Qin. Can you ask him to come to the Imperial Palace?" Gao Jin glanced at Qinya and said indifferently, "Yes, senior brother." Qinya replied and happily went to invite Qin Yetian. After confirming that Qinya had left, Gao Jin suddenly stood up and lightly clapped a few times. Shortly after, over a dozen black-clothed martial artists appeared in the Righteous Virtue Hall. They were all top assassins of the Bloodbat sect. Guard all the entrances and exits of the Imperial Palace. Without my orders, no one is allowed to enter or leave. Violators will be killed without mercy. Gao Jin ordered in a cold manner. The dozen black-clothed martial artists didn't reply. Instead, they disappeared into the dark night. Gao Jin had already personally gotten rid of all the hidden guards of the Imperial Palace. As for the Imperial Palace guards, he didn't disturb them for the time being. Everything in the Imperial Palace continued to operate as usual. Although he controlled the blue cloud sea, Gao Jin could only hide in the shadows and not be seen. Chapter 168. Early in the morning, the sun rose and all living things came to life. The surroundings were full of life. In the training grounds of the Jin residence, two girls, one young and one young, stood facing each other, sparring. These two girls were none other than Xiaoling, and Nie Yuro. Nie Tian watched from the side, the Pishio on his shoulder, looking relaxed and at ease. Be careful, Ro. I'll defeat you with this move. Xiaoling smiled faintly, and Yu's spirit snake comes out. The spirit snake, illusory, sword suddenly attacked Nie Yuro like a long snake. Sister Ling, Ro is not so easy to defeat. Nie Yuro laughed, and the rainbow demon rabbit appeared behind her. With a light tap of one foot, her petite body leapt 5 or 6 meters into the air, easily dodging Xiaoling sword. Xiaoling frowned, then smiled and said, Ro try my sword again. Sure. Nie Yuro smiled proudly, not the slightest bit afraid. Nie Tian watched the interesting fight between the two girls from the side, but his attention was mainly on Nie Yuro. Xiaoling was already at the 4th level of Origin Spirit, and her Spirit Snake illusory sword was very agile and fast. But even under such circumstances, Xiaoling still could not hit Nie Yuro. Although there was an element of giving in, Nie Yuro's strength could not be denied. Nie Yuro was at the 1st level of Origin Spirit, and her spirit was the Rainbow Demon Rabbit. It had 2 attributes of light and wind, and she had already cultivated the light wind moon technique that Nie Tian had given her. Nie Tian had been back from the burial cloud abyss for more than 10 days. In these 10 days, he had been in the Jin residence and had not gone out. But he could predict that it must be a mess outside. Lan Bingchen had asked to see Nie Tian several times, but was stopped every time. Even Shi Nie Tian had come to see Nie Tian a few times, but was also turned away. Nie Tian guessed that Lan Bingchen and Shi Nie Tian must be as anxious as ants on a hot pan right now. However, Nie Tian did not intend to see them. At the very least, he would have to wait until Autumn Mountain's closed-door training ended before he could see them again. Within 10 days, Nie Tian's strength rose once again, reaching the 9th level of the Origin Spirit Realm. Not only that, he had also inscribed 2 astral souls, Albone Devil Flame and Flame Demon Spear. The reason was that Nie Tian could have broken through to the manifestation realm a long time ago, but because he had been guiding Nie Yuro, his own cultivation had been delayed. Nie Tian planned to break into the manifestation realm tonight and see what kind of shocking changes would happen to the Chaos Origin embryo. Nie Tian guided Nie Yuro in her cultivation of the light wind great moon technique, and the latter did not disappoint him. In just a dozen or so days, she had already mastered several simple moves of the light wind great moon technique. When Nie Yuro had dodged Xiaoling, nimble snake, she had used the lightness of the wind technique. The light wind great moon technique was an ancient martial technique, and it was also a dual attribute martial technique of light and wind. It was almost tailor-made for Nie Yuro. Ro, pay attention. If you can withstand my snake dance, I will admit defeat. Xiaoling held the spirit snake illusory sword in her hand and shouted with a smile. Nie Yuro raised her chin like a proud little swan and giggled. Big sister Ling, you can't go back on your word. Snake dance. Nie Tian smiled. He still remembered this move. Xiaoling had used it on Qin Fun during the freshman martial gathering, forcing Qin Fun to defend passively. Take this, Xiaoling shouted. She put her palms together and rushed forward. The spirit snake illusory sword spun in the air and origin energy surged out of the blade as it attacked Nieyuro. Xiaoling did not hold back. The moment she used her sword, 7 sword shadows appeared. In the blink of an eye, the 7 sword shadows suddenly spun in the air and turned into 49 phantoms. Layers upon layers of illusions interlocked with each other, forming a green curtain of water. Like a waterfall, it pressed down on Nieyuro. Nieyuro had trained in the wind and moon technique, so she was very sensitive. However, she was afraid of this kind of large-scale attack. Nietian was a little nervous. He wanted to see if Nieyuro could withstand Xiaoling's move. Big Sister Ling, Ro is not afraid of you. Unexpectedly, Nieyuro was not afraid at all. She clapped her hands lightly and shouted, "Wind mark, puff!" Immediately, an invisible force flew across the air and hit the center of the green water curtain. Walala! It was only a light palm, but the green water curtain lost its support and shattered. Xiaoling was stunned and could not react. Nietian was also shocked. He looked at Nieyuro in a daze. Big Sister Ling, I've withstood your sword move. Does Ro win? Nieyuro shouted proudly. She was so happy that she was about to jump up and down. All right, that's enough. Ro is too powerful. I admit defeat. Xiaoling waved her hand and said helplessly, Big Sister Ling, you won't be angry, right? Nieyuro saw that Xiaoling was a little dispirited and said in a very understanding manner. Xiaoling pursed her lips and smiled. She pinched Nieyuro's little face and said, I won't be angry. Ro is so powerful. Can you protect me in the future? Okay. Nieyuro nodded heavily and said seriously, if Big Brother Fatty dares to bully Big Sister Ling in the future, Ro will not let him go. Xiaoling's face darkened. It seems that this little girl knows quite a lot. Nietian watched from the side and couldn't help but smile. It was no wonder that Xiaoling was so dispirited. Being defeated by a 9-year-old girl, no one would be happy. In fact, it was not that Xiaoling was too weak. It was because Nieyuro was too strong and her talent was too heaven-defying. Especially the light wind and clear moon arts, it was very powerful. Although it looked simple, it contained a terrifying amount of power. This kind of martial skill, without a doubt, showed that the light wind and clear moon arts was a very high-level martial skill. In the burial cloud abyss, other than the scarlet flame, Nietian's biggest gain was the light wind and clear moon arts. Big Brother Nietian, come and spar with Ro. At this time, Nieyuro suddenly shouted to Nietian. Nietian laughed and said, sure. But Ro, you have to go easy on me. Otherwise, I won't be your opponent. Nieyuro giggled and said proudly, Big Brother Nietian, don't worry. Ro will be careful and won't hurt Big Brother Nietian. Nietian and Xiaoling looked at each other speechlessly. One had to admit, this little girl Nieyuro was really brave. She couldn't really think that even Nietian couldn't be her opponent, right? Nietian walked over, raised his arm and said, Ninth Sister, I will use my sword chi to test your light wind and clear moon arts. Let's see if your wind mark or my proud sword chi is stronger. Okay, Big Brother Nietian, be careful. Nieyuro giggled. Her body was unusually agile, and she actually jumped a few meters high. Then, she slapped her palm down, and the fierce wind mark attacked towards Nietian at lightning speed. 17 blade. Nietian smiled faintly. His arm moved in a circle in the air, and suddenly, a flowing light sword shield appeared in front of him. Bang! A muffled sound was heard. The wind mark hit the sword shield, and it actually forced Nietian to take a step back. Not bad. Again, Nietian smiled faintly, and sword chi condensed on his fingertip again. Chapter 169. Late at night, inside the room. After finishing a set of sword moves, Nietian's forehead was covered in sweat, but he did not stop to rest. He immediately sat down and entered a state of cultivation. After more than a dozen days of preparation, Nietian planned to assail the Manifestation Realm tonight. The Manifestation Realm was the third great realm of martial practitioners. Origin Spirit and Manifestation Realm condensed into a physical form. That was why it was called the manifestation realm. The biggest difference between manifestation realm and origin spirit realm was that the origin spirit realm martial practitioner's origin spirit was just a shadow, while the manifestation realm martial practitioner's origin spirit had already condensed into a physical form. When the origin spirit condensed into a physical form, it could not only increase the martial practitioner's strength by leaps and bounds, it could also unleash the true strength of the origin spirit. For example, Tang Yuyu's origin spirit, the nine-winged dragon crow. At the origin spirit realm, Tang Yuyu could not fly in the air. But when he reached the manifestation realm, the nine-winged dragon crow would condense into a physical form and could use its 9 pairs of wings to fly. Other weapon spirits and wood spirits were the same. When they reached the manifestation realm, they could unleash the true strength of the origin spirit more perfectly. In reality, Nietian could have assailed the manifestation realm a few days ago, but he felt that once he reached the manifestation realm, the Chaos Origin embryo inside the Chaos Origin coffin might undergo a shocking change. For safety's sake, he chose to adjust his body to peak condition before assailing the manifestation realm. 9 Extremes War God Art. First level, Golden Yellow Sky Realm. Nietian sat down and slowly channeled the 9 Extremes War God Art. The surrounding spirit energy turned into waves of heat that flowed into Nietian's body through his open pores. Right now, Nietian was at the 9th level of the origin spirit realm. He had awakened 512 stars in his body, and the strength in his hands was over 150,000 kilograms. Nietian had already discovered that with every increase in strength, the power of the stars could be awakened doubled. They could also awaken on their own, and Nietian did not need to sense the power of the stars. Right now, the star totem on the origin star stone was beginning to show signs. He could see a very small corner. While it was blurry, it was enough to imagine the enormity of the star totem. Circulating the 9 Extremities War God Art, origin energy surged out from his meridians, cleansing his dantian and circulating throughout his entire body. As the essence energy circulated within his body, the speed at which Nietian absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth became faster and faster. His 10 elemental meridians were quickly filled with elemental energy, and he was ready to break through to the next realm. Now it's the most important moment. Nietian took a few foundation pill and blood pill to ensure that his physical strength and mental power were at their peak. Let the breakthrough begin. Nietian did not waste any time and immediately began his breakthrough to the manifestation realm. Elemental energy, attack. With a thought, Nietian's 10 key meridians released a powerful amount of yuan energy and star energy that attacked the primal chaos original coffin. The manifestation realm required one to fill one's primordial spirit with primordial energy, allowing the primordial spirit to slowly solidify. The 10 elemental meridians crashed against the primal chaos original coffin like a river washing a dam. This was almost a cruel act of self-harm, using one's own spirit energy to attack one's own spirit. But every martial artist had to go through this cruel process. Only by going through the hardest of hardships could one rise above others. Martial artists cultivated in defiance of the natural order and fought against the world. This was an act that defied the natural order and changed one's fate. The path of the martial way was fated to be filled with difficulties. Only those with great talent and a strong mind could reach the peak of the martial way and achieve the ultimate path. As the impact of the key meridians on the primordial spirit grew stronger, waves of intense pain spread from inside his body and instantly spread throughout his entire body. Nietian immediately felt as if every inch of muscle and bone in his body was about to be torn apart and crushed. The intense pain caused his entire body to tremble uncontrollably. Persevere, I will succeed. Nietian gritted his teeth and persisted. He would not give up. Ascending to the manifestation realm was a qualitative leap for a martial artist. It was like a silkworm turning into a butterfly or a phoenix undergoing nirvana. If one wanted to succeed, They had to endure unbearable pain. Under the impact of the key meridians, the primal chaos original coffin began to undergo a miraculous change. The originally somewhat illusory image slowly became solid and turned from incorporeal. I'm about to succeed. Everything was progressing smoothly. Nyetian was slightly excited. He felt that hope was right in front of him. Yet at this moment, Nyetian suddenly let out a cry of pain. Even his handsome face turned hideous. Pain! In this instant, the pain in his body suddenly multiplied. Nyetian's entire body shook violently, and he almost fainted. Why is it so painful? Nyetian gritted his teeth and seemed to be in disbelief. The pain he was experiencing right now far exceeded his expectations. In fact, it was even worse than the pain he felt when his primordial spirit awakened. What is going on? Nyetian growled in a low tone. His gaze turned strange and vicious. In his previous life, Nyetian already knew the process of ascending to the manifestation realm. The inexplicable pain he was experiencing right now was absolutely unreasonable. Nyetian looked inside the primal chaos original coffin and immediately froze. He exclaimed, "It's the chaos origin fetus." Inside the primal chaos original coffin, the chaos origin vein suddenly shook violently and expanded slowly. There were also faint lines of fire circulating on its surface. Is the chaos origin fetus about to be born? Nyetian was so shocked that his heart almost jumped out of his throat. He even forgot about the pain all over his body. The 9 transformations of chaos, born from nothingness. The chaos origin fetus awakened. Nyetian still remembered the voice that came from the primal chaos original coffin when the chaos origin fetus awakened. It was still ringing in his ears now. He did not know what was going to happen next. He was completely focused on the chaos origin fetus. Like a man who was about to give birth, his heart was filled with fear and excitement. The chaos origin fetus shook more and more violently and expanded more and more. It was almost twice its original size. The pain in Nyetian's body became even more terrifying. It was simply a kind of indescribable pain, and he almost fainted. With his terrifyingly strong willpower, Nyetian forced himself to stay awake. He did not want to miss anything that was about to happen. However, everything that happened next was so slow and torturous. There were a few times that Nyetian almost fainted. After an unknown period of time, the chaos origin fetus finally moved. At this moment, Nyetian opened his eyes wide and did not even dare to breathe loudly. Crack, crack, crack. A crisp cracking sound could be heard. The chaos origin vein started to bulge, but in the next moment, it turned into spider web-like cracks. The chaos origin fetus is about to be born. At this moment, Nyetian's nerves were so tense that he could not even speak properly. Pop! Next, a small crack appeared on the chaos origin fetus. Pop! Another small crack appeared. Pop, pop, pop. Then, more and more cracks appeared on the chaos origin fetus. All of the cracks connected together and formed a huge crack. Squeak! The next moment, a little beast that was as red as fire let out a roar and appeared in front of Nyetian. Chapter 170. Nyetian stared blankly at the little crimson beast that had been born from the chaotic origin embryo for a long while, unable to utter a single word. The little red beast's body was as red as blood, and it exuded an exquisite beauty. Its shape was a little strange. Its body was not big, but it had a huge head and a pair of big eyes. Outside its mouth were 2 exposed teeth, which were red as well. On its head were 2 small scarlet horns that were tinged with black. The strangest thing was that there was a pair of retracted wings on its back, which were also scarlet in color. Nyetian stared at it for a long time, but he could not tell what kind of spirit beast this little beast was. It looked like a little Pishio, a little lion, a little Qilin, and a little dragon. These characteristics were quite similar to the 9 extreme beasts that Nyetian had seen in his previous life. However, the 9 extreme beasts did not have horns or wings, and they were not scarlet in color. Yeah. The little beast seemed to be looking at Nyetian as well. It blinked its big eyes and shook its head. It was indescribably adorable. Damn, you are a spirit beast born from the chaotic origin fetus. Don't tell me your greatest skill is acting cute? Nyetian was speechless. He could not hide the disappointment in his heart. He had thought that the chaotic origin fetus would give birth to an earth-shattering, powerful holy beast. He did not expect it to be an adorable little fellow. He could not accept this. At that moment, a deep voice rang in Nyetian's ears. The 9 transformations of chaos, born from nothingness. The 9 extreme chaos beast, containing the body of the 9 extreme, devours the soul of the heavens, descends. Hearing this voice again, Nyetian was extremely shocked. The 9 extreme chaos beast, containing the body of the 9 extreme, devours the soul of the heavens. Nyetian suddenly thought of something, and his heart lit up. He seemed to understand the origin of the 9 extreme chaos beasts. The chaotic origin fetus was just a fetus of nothingness. It could be said that there was nothing, but it could also be said that it could give birth to everything. Nyetian's primordial spirit in his previous life had been a 9 extreme beast. That was why the 9 extreme chaos beast in the chaos origin embryo had the body of a 9 extreme beast. That was also why the 9 extreme chaos beast looked so similar to the 9 extreme beast. As for the 9-level chaos beast heaven-devouring soul, it originated from the awakening of the power of the stars. Therefore, the chaos origin embryo had actually fused the 9 extreme beasts and the heaven-devouring soul of the stars together to create the 9 extreme chaos beasts. The 9 extremities body devours heaven and soul. Very good. When Nyetian understood all this, he instantly felt much happier. He felt that no matter how weak the 9 extreme chaos beast was, it was definitely more ferocious than the 9 extreme beasts in his previous life. After all, the 9 extreme chaos beast was a 9 extreme beast that possessed the soul to devour the heavens. It was a strengthened version of the 9 super beasts. Just as Nyetian was feeling pleased with himself, the outside world was experiencing strange changes because of the 9th level chaos beast descent. The moment the 9th level chaos beast descended, a huge force that could not be seen by the naked eye soared into the sky, straight into the 9 heavens. The huge force seemed to have the power to tear heaven and earth apart. It passed through the vast sky, through the turbulent dark clouds, through the 9 heavens' astral winds, through the Meru world, and into the heaven realm. At the same time, in the small Meru world, the Meru world, and even the heaven realm's god realm, the primordial spirits of all the martial artists above the essence spirit realm shook inexplicably and trembled incessantly. In a secret place in the Blue Cloud Empire, the Bloodbat sect master, Gao Jin, was sitting cross-legged and concentrating on his cultivation. Suddenly, his primordial spirit trembled, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. What's going on? He jumped to his feet, his face pale. The trembling in the depths of his soul made his heart beat inexplicably. At the same time, Qi Feng and Qiu Shan, who were in seclusion in different places, also felt their primordial spirits tremble. Immediately, they spat out a mouthful of blood. At the same time, all the martial artists above the essence spirit realm in the small Meru world felt a deep tremble in the depths of their souls. And the higher their cultivation, the more obvious this feeling of trembling was. It was a kind of trembling in the depths of their bloodline, a kind of deep reverence the weak had for the strong. Countless people in seclusion and cultivation were interrupted midway, vomiting blood on the spot. There were even people whose primordial spirits were heavily injured because of this. The heaven realm's god realm, the upper world of the small Meru world. In a vast mountain valley, there was a giant boulder that was tens of thousands of feet tall. It was majestic and dignified, making people want to worship it. Boom! Suddenly, an enormous force of energy came out of nowhere and hit the giant boulder. The boulder shook violently, and a deep crack appeared in the middle, breaking it in half. The entire valley shook violently, causing sand and dust to rise into the air and rocks to fly in all directions. In the next moment, a white light suddenly appeared in the sky. It flew down from the peak of the clouds and landed not far from the giant boulder. It was a white-robed old man. The white-robed old man had white hair and youthful face. He had the air of a sage. With a wave of his long sleeve, all the sand and stones in the air fell to the ground. The mountain valley regained its calm, as if nothing had happened. However, the giant boulder was already broken into two halves. The white-robed old man looked at the giant boulder, his expression complicated and unfathomable. He said woodenly, "The heaven-splitting holy stone actually broke into two halves." After a moment, another 8 figures appeared. Each and every one of their auras was powerful, like gods and demons descending to the world. If Nyetian was here, he would be able to recognize that these 9 people were the Heaven Realm's 9 emperors. The Heaven Realm's 9 emperors ruled the entire Heaven Realm's divine realm. Heavenly Emperor Dainite was just one of the 9 emperors. Furthermore, at this time, Heavenly Emperor Dainite was precisely among these 9 people. After the 9 emperors appeared, they looked at the heaven-splitting holy stone in surprise, dumbfounded and incredibly shocked. The heaven-splitting holy stone had existed since the birth of the Heaven Realm's divine realm. After experiencing tens of thousands of years, it was like the witness of the Heaven Realm's divine realm. Even after hundreds of thousands of years of erosion, it still stood tall and did not fall. Even Heavenly Emperor powerhouses would find it hard to damage it in the slightest too. Lord Snow Emperor, the heaven-splitting holy stone is the stone of fate of the Heaven Realm's divine realm. At this time, it broke for no reason. Could it be that the Heaven Realm's divine realm has some calamity? A purple-robed old man had a horrified expression and went forward to ask the white-robed old man who appeared first. The white-robed old man was precisely one of the 9 emperors, the only peak Heavenly Emperor powerhouse in the Heaven Realm's divine realm, the Snow Emperor who was revered as a half-god. The purple-robed old man was one of the 9 emperors, Great Emperor Polestar. At the same time, he was also the possessor of the purple demon eyes, one of the 10 great congenital pupils. But now, even his purple demon eyes couldn't see what was happening. The Snow Emperor's brows furrowed slightly, and he floated in front of the heaven-splitting holy stone. He closed his eyes, the universe major development technique circulating. His entire body emitted waves of vast power, filling a stretch of heaven and earth, slowly merging into the heaven-splitting holy stone. The other 8 great emperors looked at the Snow Emperor nervously, their faces panicked, as if they were waiting for something. Beads of sweat appeared slightly on the Snow Emperor's forehead. The aura around him became even more terrifying. The laws between heaven and earth slowly underwent changes, continuously probing the mysteries hidden inside the heaven-splitting holy stone. At this time, a clamor sounded outside the valley. Experts from other sects and forces rushed over in a steady stream. "Stop, everyone! Don't let them near the valley, and don't let them see the heaven-splitting holy stone break," the Snow Emperor said indifferently, but his eyes were closed even tighter. Chapter 171. Yes, the 8 great emperors bowed slightly to the Snow Emperor and answered in unison. The heaven creation holy stone had an extraordinary significance to the Heaven Realm. It had existed since the birth of the Heaven Realm and was regarded as the stone of destiny of the Heaven Realm. If people knew that the heaven creation holy stone was broken, the consequences would be devastating. The great emperor of Ziwei, who had spoken earlier, appeared in the sky and waved his hand, drawing a line in the void. Bang! With a loud sound, a terrifying gully thousands of meters long appeared on the ground. The great emperor of Ziwei's voice rumbled. "Those who approach the valley will be killed. Those who speak nonsense will be killed." As the thunderous voice fell, all the experts rushing to the valley stopped, not daring to take even half a step into the gully. Everyone shut their mouths and looked at each other, not daring to take even half a step forward. No one dared to disobey the orders of the Heaven Realm's 9 emperors. In the Heaven Realm's God Realm, the Heaven Realm's 9 emperors were the absolute peak. The others could only submit. The great emperor of Ziwei no longer cared about these people. He landed and looked at the Snow Emperor. The situation is so serious this time. The Snow Emperor's universe development technique can deduce everything in the world. This is the first time I've seen him expend so much energy. Will there really be a calamity in the Heaven Realm's God Realm? The great emperor of Ziwei said in a low voice, his brows furrowed even more. The other great emperors were tense, looking at the Snow Emperor nervously, waiting for him to give an answer. After a long time, the Snow Emperor finally opened his eyes and his aura dissipated. Before he spoke, a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Lord Snow Emperor. The 8 great emperors hurried forward, their expressions extremely nervous. The Snow Emperor was already a peak heavenly emperor. What kind of power could make him vomit blood? The Snow Emperor waved his hand slightly and spat out 8 words with difficulty. Chaos descends. All living beings submit. Chaos descends. All living beings submit. The 8 great emperors were stunned, not understanding. What does that mean? Heaven's secrets cannot be seen. The Snow Emperor looked into the sky and took a step forward. His figure was already tens of thousands of meters in the sky. He looked down and slowly said, "From today onwards, the Heaven Realms, God Realms, number 1 forbidden land. Without my permission, no one is allowed to enter. Violators will be killed." The mighty voice was like a sudden clap of thunder from the 9 heavens, resounding in the hearts of everyone present. After the Snow Empress finished speaking, she didn't stay any longer. Her figure flashed past like a bolt of white lightning. The people outside the valley were stunned, unable to react for a long time. To be able to sense that something had happened to the heaven-splitting holy stone, these people were all overlords of a region. Who would have thought that they didn't even have the right to take a look at the heaven-splitting holy stone? But since the Snow Empress had personally given the order, no one in the Heaven Realm dared to disobey. As the Snow Empress disappeared, the other 8 great emperors looked at each other and did not know what to say. Everyone, do you have any opinions on what the Snow Empress said about the descent of chaos and the submission of all living beings? In the end, it was the Emperor of Purple Tenuity who couldn't help but ask. The others shook their heads, not saying a word. Among the 8 emperors, a black-robed man had a lingering worry on his face. This person was the Dainite Emperor who caused the death of Nietion. That's strange. Why did I feel the aura of the 9 extreme beast in the huge force just now? Dainite Emperor thought, his brows furrowed even more. The 9 extreme beast. This was a detail that Dainite Emperor couldn't help but pay attention to. 100 years ago, the people of the Heaven Realm all changed their expressions when they heard the words 9 extreme beast. That was because the owner of the 9 extreme beast was the number 1 war god of the Heaven Realm, Nietion. Dainite Emperor was very familiar with the 9 extreme beast. From the huge force just now, he sensed a trace of the 9 extreme beast's aura, which made him think of Nietion immediately. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Dainite Emperor immediately denied his own guess and said in his heart, "He died 100 years ago. I destroyed his body with my own hands. It's impossible for him to still be alive. I must have been too nervous and sensed wrongly." Dainite Emperor comforted himself in this way, but it didn't make him feel completely at ease. Instead, the worry in his heart became more and more uncontrollable. It would probably be very difficult for him to sleep peacefully in the future. The 8 great emperors each had their own thoughts and quickly dispersed. In the valley, only the 2 halves of the heaven-splitting Saint Stone were left. In this life, Nietion and Dainite Emperor finally met for the first time. However, Nietion was still in a dream. He had no idea that he had caused such a huge commotion. In the room, Nietion couldn't suppress the excitement in his heart as he jumped to his feet. Looking inside his soul space, Nietion was shocked to find that the Primal Chaos original coffin had already solidified. He had successfully advanced to the manifestation realm. The 9 extreme Chaos Beast had appeared, and Nietion had actually advanced to the manifestation realm. The primal star stone has awakened the power of 1,024 stars. In the galaxy realm, Niet Tion's primal star stone was shining with starlight. He had awakened the power of more than 1,000 stars. Without a doubt, Niet Tion's combat strength had almost doubled. Let's see if the 9 extreme chaos beast can be released like a primordial spirit. With a thought, a ball of light appeared behind Niet Tion. The scarlet body of a 9 extreme chaos beast appeared. As expected, Niet Tion was so excited that he almost laughed out loud. Yeah, the 9 extreme chaos beast tilted its head and called out. Its exaggerated eyes scanned Niet Tion's body. Finally, its gaze landed on little Pichio, who was not far from Niet Tion. Roar, roar. Little Pichio was still sleeping soundly. Suddenly, it let out a strange cry as if it had sensed danger. When it saw that the 9 extreme chaos beast behind Niet Tion was looking at it, it subconsciously retreated. Its eyes were filled with fear, and it looked very pitiful. Seeing this, Niet Tion couldn't help but feel happy. Pichio, an ancient spiritual beast, the descendant of the legendary divine dragon, was actually so timid in front of the 9 extreme chaos beast. It was obvious how powerful the 9 extreme chaos beast was. Hoo-hoo! Just as little Pichio was trembling in fear, the 9 extreme chaos beast suddenly spread the wings on its back. They were more than a meter long, which was a few times bigger than its body. Yeah. The 9 extreme chaos beast flapped its wings and suddenly flew to Lil Guai's side. It stretched out its little scarlet claws and stroked little Guai's soft head a few times, as if it was comforting it. Roar, roar. Miraculously, little Guai actually calmed down immediately. It meekly let out 2 low growls and fell asleep again. Niet Tion was amused by the scene in front of him. The 9 extreme chaos beast and little Guai. These 2 little beasts were very cute. Just by leaning against each other, there was an inexplicable sense of humor, which made people want to laugh. One of them had a chubby body with a pair of exaggerated dark circles, while the other had a crimson body with an exaggerated pair of wings. These 2 fellows were simply a perfect match. Yeah. Seeing that little Guai had fallen asleep, the 9 extreme chaos beast leaped onto Niet Tion's shoulder. It folded its wings and intimately leaned on Niet Tion's neck. Niet Tion smiled faintly and gently stroked the little fellow. He felt a faint warmth, which was very real. Chapter 172. Niet Tion let out a startled cry, and his whole body went stiff. It took him a long time to come to his senses. Yeah. The 9th level chaos beast waved its little red claws, as if it was trying to make Niet Tion happy. Niet Tion rubbed his face harshly as he forced himself to calm down. He looked at the little fellow in front of him and said, "You actually have your own spiritual consciousness." A primordial spirit having its own spiritual consciousness was something unimaginable. Niet Tion was so excited earlier that he did not realize that the 9th level chaos beast was actually moving on its own and doing some things on its own. This kind of thing was too shocking. A martial artist primordial spirit, be it a beast spirit, a wood spirit, a weapon spirit, or any other variant primordial spirit, no matter how heaven-defying it would not have its own consciousness. It would only listen to the martial artist's instructions. However, the 9th level chaos beast in front of him was obviously not like that. Not only was it comforting Xiao Guai, but it was also making Niet Tion happy. This was obviously not something a primordial spirit could do. Without a doubt, the 9th level chaos beast had a consciousness and spiritual consciousness that was independent of Niet Tion. Yeah. The little chaos beast drew circles on Niet Tion's face, looking unusually happy. However, Niet Tion was like a rock. He did not react for a long time. Seeing that Niet Tion did not react, the little chaos beast's head drooped down as if it was troubled. Niet Tion saw every move the little chaos beast made, and he could not calm down for a long time. After an unknown period of time, Niet Tion finally suppressed the shock in his heart and gradually regained his composure. Perhaps it was not a bad thing that the little chaos beast had its own consciousness. At least, Niet Tion could treat it as an independent entity, just like Xiao Guai. After completely calming down, Neation hugged the little chaos beast in his arms. It felt like he was hugging a brazier. However, it was not hot. Instead, he felt an indescribable warmth. Little fellow, what kind of magical existence are you? Neation touched the little chaos beast's horns as she felt a strange feeling in her heart. It was as if she had just become a mother after giving birth. The 9-level chaos beast had been born from Neation's primal chaos original coffin. From this aspect, Neation was indeed a mother. His primordial spirit had given birth to a spiritual beast. If such a thing were to spread out, others would definitely think that Neation had gone crazy. Hiya, hiya. The little chaos beast called out happily, as if it was acting coquettishly towards Neation. Neation curled his lips and suddenly thought of something. He smiled and said, "Little guy, you don't have a name yet. I'll call you Little 9 from now on." Since the 9 extreme chaos beast had a 9 extreme body, he would call it Little 9. Moreover, Little 9 was also the name of Neation's previous life's elemental spirit 9 extreme beast. Neation was a nostalgic person. He was extremely satisfied with the name Little 9. Hiya, hiya. The little guy seemed to understand Neation's words as its little head shook crazily like a rattle drum. Its 2 little claws were clawing anxiously. It was obvious that it was extremely dissatisfied with this name. Neation acted as if he did not see it as he smiled slightly and said, "Since you are not saying anything, I will take it as you have agreed. From now on, you will be called Little 9. Little 9, Little 9, that's a pretty good name." As Neation spoke, he touched Little 9's little wings. Hiya, hiya. Little 9's little face was puffed up in anger as it looked very dejected and frustrated. "All right, you should go back to your coffin. I want to rest as well." Neation touched Little 9's little head as he thought about it, and the little guy returned to the primal chaos original coffin. Neation smiled slightly and began to rest. He needed to adjust his body's condition to its peak, because he had a feeling that something big would happen tomorrow. The next day, just as the sun rose from the east, Neation's figure had already appeared at the Jin clan's martial arts arena. Neation stood in front of an enormous wooden pillar, his entire body like an unsheathed sword. Boom! He was about 10 meters away from the wooden pillar. He slightly circulated his yuan meridians, raised his arm, and punched out. Bang! With a loud explosion, the thick wooden pillar was smashed into pieces. A terrifying force of energy smashed into the wall behind the wooden pillar. Rumble. The thick wall shook and directly collapsed. What great strength! Neation glanced at his own fist, and the corners of his mouth curled into a satisfied smile. He had purposely restrained his power in this punch and did not use any martial techniques or sword energy. He did not expect it to be so powerful. With one punch, the wooden pillar was smashed into pieces and the wall collapsed. The power of this punch was enough to instantly kill any martial practitioner below the 5th level of the Wanxiang realm. One had to know that Neation had only used the pure power of his body. He did not use any martial techniques or sword energy, and his strength was only that of the 1st level of the Wanxiang realm. If Neation had used martial techniques or sword energy, it would have been enough to instantly kill a weaker 8th or 9th level Wanxiang realm martial practitioner. However, it was still too difficult for him to fight against a giant spirit realm martial practitioner with his current strength. The 9th level of the Wanxiang realm and the 1st level of the giant spirit realm looked like there was only a small realm between them, but they were 2 completely different realms. A giant spirit realm martial practitioner could form the giant spirit body inside their body. Just this point alone was enough to crush most Wanxiang realm martial practitioners without using any martial techniques. Although Neation had ascended to the Wanxiang realm, the primal chaos original coffin had solidified, and the primal chaos original fetus was born. He did not plan on using the primal chaos original coffin or the 9-level chaos beast in front of anyone. Before he had enough strength, Neation had to maintain a certain degree of caution. At this moment, Little 9 was quietly cultivating inside the primal chaos original coffin. This little fellow was having a great time because the time inside the primal chaos original coffin was 10 times slower than the outside world. 1 day of cultivation for little Nine was equivalent to 10 days of cultivation for other spirit beasts. Nietian was also very much looking forward to what kind of strength little Nine would have after growing up. Why is Qiushan here? At this time, Nietian saw a figure appear in the distance. It was Qiushan. Qiushan should be in seclusion right now. Why did he suddenly come out? Mister, you really are here. Qiushan walked over in large strides. He looked very happy and in high spirits, as if he had been reborn. Indeed, Qiushan was practically reborn. After cultivating in seclusion for more than a dozen days, Qiushan's strength had skyrocketed to the 3rd level of the giant spirit realm. The 3rd level of the giant spirit realm. He had reached the goal that Nietian had set for him, and he had exceeded it. When Nietian saw Qiushan's sudden increase in strength, he was also very happy. He said with a smile, Qiushan, why did you come out early? If you had cultivated in seclusion for another 2 days, your strength might have improved further. Qiushan was also a little angry. He said, Mister, you don't know. I was in seclusion last night, but my primordial spirit produced a strange tremor, and my seclusion was forcefully interrupted. Oh, Nietian frowned slightly. Then, he used his divine senses to feel Qiushan's body. When he did not find any abnormalities, he was more at ease. Chapter 173. Nietian looked at Qiushan and said, Your strength is already at the 3rd level of the giant spirit realm, which is not bad. In the following period of time, your strength will gradually decrease, and you will eventually reach the 5th level of the giant spirit realm. After that, you will have to cultivate slowly like ordinary martial artists. Many thanks, Mister. Qiushan will definitely not disappoint, Mister. Qiushan bowed deeply respectfully. Nietian smiled and said, No need to be so courteous in the future. You and I are friends, not master and servant. Yes. Qiushan nodded slightly, but his expression was similarly respectful. Boss. At this time, a familiar greeting sounded, and a fat figure appeared. Nietian looked at Jean de Bayo, who was sprinting overexcitedly, and frowned slightly. He thought to himself, De Bayo is out of seclusion too? Didn't I tell him to go into seclusion for a month? Why is he out so soon? De Bayo, you're out of seclusion too? Nietian asked with a frown. Boss, don't mention it. When I was in seclusion last night, my primordial spirit suddenly felt a tremor, and then I spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. My seclusion was forcefully interrupted. Jean de Bayo looked vexed and a little happy at the same time. He said mysteriously, Boss, guess what my strength is now? When Nietian heard Jean de Bayo's words, his brows furrowed even tighter. 2 people's seclusion interrupted at the same time. What was going on? Even if Nietian cracked his skull, he could not imagine that it was due to his 9th level chaos beast descending into the world. Seeing that Jean de Bayo was fine, Nietian did not think too much. He just glanced at him and said with a smile, You're now at the 5th level of the essence spirit realm. The 3,000 fiend god seals in Jean de Bayo's body were stimulated, and he absorbed a bit of the demonic fire's energy. It was not a big deal for him to reach the 5th level of the essence spirit realm after seclusion for over 10 days. After all, he had also stopped at the 1st level of the essence spirit realm for 5 years. Even if he did not cultivate, his Dantian had accumulated a lot of heaven and earth spiritual energy. Jean de Bayo looked at Nietian and exclaimed, Boss, you're already a 1st level Wanxiang martial artist. Nietian nodded. Even if he was stronger than Jean de Bayo, it was impossible to hide his strength in front of the fiend god blood scroll. Ah, that's right. Jean de Bayo immediately remembered something. He let out a mischievous laugh and said, I almost forgot the important matter. My father wants you to go to the meeting hall. The Crown Prince and Qin Yetian are here. They seem to have something urgent to discuss with you. Looks like it's time. Let's go meet them. Nietian faintly smiled, turned around, and left the martial arts practice field. Qiushan and Jean de Bayo hurriedly followed. Nietian found out a few days ago that Lan Bingchen and Qin Yetian had always wanted to see him, but he had refused to meet them. Now that Shoshan's seclusion was over, it was time to meet these two people. After a while, Nyetian and the others appeared outside the meeting hall of the Jin mansion. "Sir, save me." When Lan Bingqian saw Nyetian's figure from afar, she was so emotional that she couldn't control herself. She ran out of the hall and knelt in front of Nyetian with a plop. She was crying and extremely sorrowful. If other people were to witness this scene, they would definitely think that Lan Bingqian had gone crazy. How could she ignore the demeanor of the crown prince? But of course, Lan Bingqian wasn't crazy. In his eyes, the crown prince's demeanor was important, but it was far less important than his life. Qin Yetian followed behind Lan Bingqian. Seeing the latter kneel, he immediately clenched his teeth and knelt down as well. He painfully said, "Sir, please save me." Qiushan and Jin Debao were both stunned. They didn't know what Lan Bingqian and Qin Yetian were doing. Lan Bingqian had always wanted to become the disciple of Nyetian, and Nyetian had also saved his sister. But why was Qin Yetian kneeling? Nyetian was the enemy who killed his son. Not only did he not seek revenge from Nyetian, but he also wanted to kneel and beg Nyetian. It was truly incomprehensible. Moreover, Lan Bingqian and Qin Yetian were people from two different camps. The two of them appearing at the same time was truly strange. Facing Lan Bingqian and Qin Yetian's shocking actions, Nyetian appeared very calm. He just smiled faintly and said, "The two of you get up. Let's go to the main hall to talk." "Thank you very much, sir." Lan Bingqian stood up, trembling with fear. He didn't even dare to look up at Nyetian. Qin Yetian also stood up and obediently followed behind Nyetian. Everyone came to the main hall. Nyetian and the others sat down, but Lan Bingqian and Qin Yetian stood straight in fear and trepidation. Jin Mingxin and Qi Feng were already in the main hall. Qi Feng had also just arrived at the Jin residence. He was originally in seclusion, but was mercilessly interrupted by Nyetian. Nyetian picked up his teacup and took a sip. His gaze swept over Lan Bingqian as he said indifferently, "Tell me, what's the situation in the imperial city now?" Nyetian reckoned that the situation in the imperial city must be on the verge of collapse. Otherwise, Lan Bingqian wouldn't have done such a shocking action just now. He also didn't expect Qin Yetian to kneel and beg Nyetian. It seemed that Qin Yetian wasn't too muddle-headed. At the critical moment, he finally took the right step. When Jin Debao saw Nyetian's appearance, he chuckled in his heart and said, "Boss, I give you 100 points for this posturing. In the future, I have to learn more and be as posturing as boss." Lan Bingqian suddenly looked up at Nyetian. Then, she couldn't control herself and burst into tears. "Mr. Nya, Imperial Father has gone crazy. He wants to make the Empress the Empress." Nyetian was startled by Lan Bingqian's sudden cry. He spat out the mouthful of tea he had just drunk. Seeing Lan Bingqian's pitiful appearance, crying like a tearful person, Nyetian frowned and said in his heart, "Is this guy really the crown prince?" How could Nyetian know that Lan Bingqian had been requesting to see the emperor for the past dozen days, but hadn't been summoned? He even discovered that the guards in the imperial palace had been changed. Furthermore, there were rumors in the imperial palace that the emperor was going to make the empress the empress the empress. This kind of news almost completely defeated Lan Bingqian. Nyetian glanced at Lan Bingqian and knew that the latter was probably still in the dark and did not know what had happened. Lan Yanhai making the empress the empress the empress. Was he stupid or crazy to do such a crazy thing? The only explanation was that Lan Yanhai was being controlled by someone. As for who was being controlled, Nyetian did not think about it. It must be people from the Bloodbath sect. Nyetian no longer looked at Lan Bingqian and turned to look at Qin Yetian. He said coolly, "Commander Qin, I think you're much smarter than His Highness the Crown Prince. You should be an understanding person. Tell me what happened." Qin Yetian nodded heavily and subconsciously swept his gaze over the people around him. He hesitated for a moment but still said, "His Majesty the Emperor is being controlled by people from the Bloodbath sect. The current imperial palace has completely fallen into the control of the Bloodbath sect." Commander Qin's words are true. Jin Mingxin and Chi Feng were stunned at the same time. The others were stunned. They did not expect the matter to be so serious. Chapter 174. Lan Yanhai was controlled by the Bloodbat sect, and the palace was under their control. All of this must have been done with Qin Ye's secret help. Otherwise, the Bloodbat sect would not have succeeded so easily. Qin Yetian, what nonsense are you spouting? How could father be controlled by the Bloodbat sect? Are you spreading rumors? Do you believe that I will get father to punish you for disobedience? Lan Bingqian reacted after a long time, but he was unwilling to believe the truth. He shouted. Nie Tianling looked coldly at the crazy Lan Bingqian. His expression darkened as he growled. Your Highness, have you had enough? The low voice was like a heavy hammer that smashed into Lan Bingqian's heart, causing him to calm down. Your Highness, this subject's words are all true. Moreover, I have personally seen the Bloodbat sect leader. Qin Yetian sighed and said. Lan Bingqian sat on the ground, unable to bear the blow. He lowered his head and did not speak. Yetian did not care about him. He looked at Qin Yetian and said, Commander Qin, if my guess is correct, the Bloodbat sect leader wants to rope you in and make you stand on his side, right? Yes. Qin Yetian nodded. Yetian's lips curled up. I want to know, why does Commander Qin not agree? Logically speaking, the Bloodbat sect leader was recruited by Qinya, and Qinya was Qin Yetian's sister. Qin Yetian had no reason to stand on Yetian's side. But Qin Yetian learned a shocking secret from Qinya. The Bloodbat sect leader was a member of the Gao clan that had been exterminated, Gao Jin. Qin Yetian's father was the executor of the Gao clan's massacre. Gao Jin's words could deceive Qinya, but not Qin Yetian. Qin Yetian knew that if Gao Jin succeeded, after killing the royal clan, his next step would be to kill the Qin clan. Xiao Luyang, who betrayed Lan Yanhai and was cruelly killed by Gao Jin, was a living example. In order for the Qin clan to survive, Qin Yetian chose to stand on Yetian's side. Qin Yetian knew that if there was one person in Blue Cloud City who could turn the tide, it would be Yetian. Qin Yetian couldn't just watch as the Qin clan was annihilated and walked towards destruction, so he could only give up on avenging his son and come to beg Yetian. After briefly explaining the situation, Qin Yetian knelt down and said sincerely, Mr. Nye, what happened in the past was my fault. If Mr. Nye is willing to save Blue Cloud situation, I am willing to die as an apology. With that, Qin Yetian knelt down. Yetian frowned. Governor Qin, please stand up and speak. Your life is too precious. I don't dare take it. Qin Yetian stood up, trembling with fear. Jin Mingxin, Chi Feng, and the others looked at each other. They were shocked by what Qin Yetian had said, but they didn't know what to do next. Although Jin Mingxin knew that something big was about to happen in the Blue Cloud Empire, he didn't expect the situation to be this serious. No one spoke. The hall was silent, and the atmosphere was somewhat oppressive. Lan Bingqian suddenly stood up and begged, Mr. Nye, I beg you, please save Blue Cloud Empire. Nye Tian nodded, indicating for Lan Bingqian to calm down. The situation in Blue Cloud Empire was grim, but it wasn't enough to make Nye Tian nervous. In fact, Nye Tian was very happy to see such a situation. Only by doing so could he force the Bloodbat sect leader out. He hadn't forgotten about the Nye clan for a day. He would definitely destroy the Bloodbat sect. Your Highness, I can think of a way to save the situation, but I have a condition. Nye Tian smiled faintly, his expression calm. Mr. Nye, please speak. Lan Bingqian calmed down a little and waited for Nye Tian to demand an exorbitant price. Under such circumstances, no matter how outrageous Nye Tian's conditions were, Lan Bingqian had to agree to it. I want a city from you, Nye Tian said calmly. A city? Lan Bingqian was startled. He originally thought that Nye Tian would give a terrifying condition like splitting the Blue Cloud Empire equally. He didn't expect that he only wanted a city. Not to mention one city. Even if Nye Tian wanted 10 cities, Lan Bingqian would still offer them with both hands. I want the border city of Blue Cloud Empire, Heaven Luo City. A smile appeared at the corner of Nye Tian's mouth as he said, I want this city to break away from the rule of the Blue Cloud Empire and belong to me alone. Heaven Luo City was the hiding place of the demonic fire Doomsday Flame. Nietian wanted this city because he wanted to take down the Doomsday Flame. If Gu Yi was here and heard Nietian's words, he would immediately understand what Nietian meant when he said, Heaven Luo City. I want it. Good. No problem. Lan Bingxian didn't hesitate at all and agreed. Nietian smiled in satisfaction and then looked at Qin Yetian. He said, Commander Qin, if you want to turn the situation around, you will need our cooperation. Mr. Nia, please speak. I will listen to everything you say. Qin Yetian cupped his hands and said very respectfully. Nietian thought and said, Since you have already seen the Bloodbat Gate Master, you must have some understanding of the Bloodbat Gate strength. Tell me about it. Qin Yetian was the commander of the Imperial Guard after all, and wasn't someone to be trifled with. Although he had only hurried into the palace once, he had a general judgment of the Bloodbat Gate strength. He said, The Bloodbat Gate Master Gao Jin is very strong. According to my judgment, he should be around the 5th level of the Giant Spirit Realm. He has no less than 40 top assassins by his side. They should all be around the 9th level of the Manifestation Realm, maybe even a Giant Spirit Realm expert. In addition, there are hundreds of Bloodbat Gate assassins hidden in the palace. They are all very strong above the Manifestation Realm. These are only the strengths that I have detected. As for the hidden strengths, I don't know. When everyone heard Qin Yetian's words, they sucked in a cold breath at the same time. I didn't expect that the Bloodbat Gate strength is actually so strong. Just that Gate Master with the strength of the 5th level of the Giant Spirit Realm isn't easy to deal with. Qifeng was the first to speak. A hint of astonishment actually flashed across his usually calm face. The further a martial artist's strength went, the greater the disparity between each level. A first-level Origin Spirit martial artist could rely on martial techniques and talent to defeat a 9th-level Origin Spirit martial artist. But for a first-level Origin Spirit martial artist to want to defeat a 9th-level Origin Spirit martial artist was something virtually impossible. Of course, a freak like Nietian had to be excluded. Hence, just one Gao Jin was already very difficult to handle. Qiushan was at the 3rd level of the Giant Spirit Realm. Qifeng was at the 3rd level of the Giant Spirit Realm. Jin Mingxin was at the 1st level of the Giant Spirit Realm. And Qin Yetian was at the 1st level of the Giant Spirit Realm. But even if they were added together, they might not be Gao Jin's match. Moreover, Gao Jin still had so many 9th-level Manifestation Realm martial artists under him. Furthermore, they were all assassins. Each and every one of them was vicious and merciless, ruthless characters who killed without batting an eyelid. This situation was indeed not easy to handle. Nietian looked at Qifeng and suddenly thought of a person and said, Principal Qi, such a major incident happened in the Blue Cloud Empire. Is it possible for Principal Ruyu to help? Chapter 175. Qifeng was slightly taken aback. He seemed to suddenly remember something and said, Dean Ryu suddenly left the academy a few days ago. I wonder where she went. She left? Nietian frowned slightly and said in his heart, Why didn't this woman keep her word? Didn't she say she would wait for me for a month? It's only been 20 days. Why did she suddenly leave? Rui Qinyu had an agreement with Nietian before. She would give Nietian a month's time. If his strength reached the Manifestation Realm, he could follow Rui Qinyu to cultivate for 10 days. Today was the first day after a month. Rui Qinyu had left a few days ago. It had clearly been less than a month. Yes. Qifeng nodded and said helplessly. Dean Ryu seemed to have encountered something urgent. She only informed the elders of the academy. I only found out about it this morning. Qifeng added, Dean Ryu has always been indifferent to worldly affairs. Even if she is still in the academy, she will not participate in this matter. Nietian nodded and agreed with Qifeng's words. Nietian had seen Rui Qinyu's eyes before. It was an extreme coldness that kept people 1,000 miles away. It was as though nothing was important in her eyes. Therefore, even if Rui Qinyu was still in Tyrant Cloud Academy, she might not be willing to help. As long as Gao Jin did not cause trouble for Tyrant Cloud Academy, Rui Qinyu could ignore everything. Rui Qinyu could not help. Nietian thought of another person, the dwarf Tong Fu. Tong Fu was at the 9th level of the Giant Soul Realm. He should be able to defeat Gao Jin easily. However, Gu Yi had probably left the black market, so Tong Fu could not be counted on. Nie Tian ran his eyes over the crowd and started to make calculations in his mind. The next battle was bound to be a bitter battle with a great disparity in strength. Nie Tian had fought many battles with a great disparity in strength. However, that was when the battlefield was not fixed and many unexpected situations could occur. Now that the battlefield was confirmed to be the palm-sized palace, it would be difficult to create an accident. After pondering for a moment, Nie Tian asked, "Governor Qin, is the Imperial Guard still under your control?" "Other than His Majesty, the Imperial Guard only listens to me," Qin Yetian said solemnly, his expression solemn. This was a moment of life and death, and there was no room for carelessness. "Very good." Nie Tian nodded lightly and said, "Based on my calculations, the Emperor is now completely under Gao Jin's control. If we continue to wait, he will firmly grasp the initiative. Rather than waiting for death, why not take the initiative to attack?" Take the initiative to attack. Jin Mingxin, Qi Feng, and the others didn't understand what Nie Tian meant. Qin Yetian immediately understood and said, "Mr. Nie wants to take the initiative and attack the Imperial Palace before the Bloodbat sect can control His Majesty to act, right?" "Yes." Nie Tian nodded heavily and said, "I don't know why the Bloodbat sect master didn't immediately let Lan Yunhai announce the Empress as the successor to the throne, but I think there must be a reason why he waited so long. If we wait for him to announce something, it will be difficult to handle. We must take the initiative in the shortest time possible and catch him off guard." In fact, what Nie Tian was more worried about was that if the Bloodbat sect master suddenly sensed Qin Yetian's betrayal and let Lan Yunhai remove Qin Yetian from his position as the Imperial Guard commander, it would be troublesome. At that time, the Bloodbat sect master would casually send someone to take over the Imperial Guard, and Nie Tian would really want to cry. "I will listen to Mr. Nie's arrangements." Qin Yetian seemed to have suddenly understood something and bowed with cupped hands. Nie Tian was able to think in reverse and take the initiative to attack in such a disadvantageous situation. Not only did he need extraordinary courage, but he also needed keen insight and a view of the overall situation. Gao Jin had already completely controlled the situation and had a measure of the various factions in Blue Cloud City. But he definitely would not have thought that Nie Tian would choose to take the initiative to attack. Nie Tian had experienced countless wars in his previous life. It was definitely not by chance that he could become the #1 war god. As the saying goes, a surprise attack is the key to victory. Only when the enemy does not expect you to have the chance to turn defeat into victory. In fact, the logic was very simple. It was like a battle between the weak and the strong. The more the weak fled, the less chance he had. On the contrary, if the weak suddenly gave the strong a fatal blow, he might just win. "Bloodbat sect master, since you have locked yourself in the palace, I will let you catch a turtle in a jar." Nie Tian chuckled, already having an idea in his heart. Since there was no time to lose, speed was of the essence in war. After explaining his plan to everyone, Nie Tian ordered everyone to get ready immediately. Tonight, in the middle of the night, the show would begin and the battle would begin. Next, it would be a battle of life and death. If one side lost, it would be a disaster. Nie Tian handed little Guai to Nie Yuro, and then accompanied Nie Yuro, Qiu Ling and the others to cultivate as if nothing had happened. He quietly waited for the night to come. Night quickly arrived. It was night. The moon was on a silver plate, and the sky was filled with stars, indicating that tomorrow would be good weather. Nie Tian looked at the full moon above his head and smiled coldly. He said to Qiushan Qi Feng behind him, "Depart." 3 figures, dressed in black, quickly disappeared under the cover of the moon. At the same time, outside the gates of the Imperial City, hundreds of Imperial Guards were waiting in formation. An armored guard captain shouted loudly, "The commander has ordered that thugs will enter the city tonight. Everyone, listen up. From now on, the gates will be sealed. No one is allowed to enter the Imperial City. Trespassers will be killed without mercy. Yes, The hundreds of manifestation realm martial practitioners answered in unison with a shocking momentum. Nietian had Qin Yetian seal the gates to prevent other people of Bloodbat sect from rushing to the imperial city as reinforcements. At the same time, it would cut off the path of retreat of Bloodbat sect. At the gates of the imperial palace, Qin Yetian was fully armored. Behind him were more than a dozen ninth-level manifestation realm subordinates. Beside him stood three people, Lan Bingshun, Jin Mingxin, and Jin Debao. They were going to see Lan Yanhai. Commander Qin, what are your intentions in entering the palace in the middle of the night? An extremely unfamiliar face appeared and blocked the path of Qin Yetian and the others. Die. Qin Yetian did not answer at all. He suddenly reached out and clamped down on the person's neck. With a crack, he immediately died. The dozen or so martial practitioners in the surroundings still wanted to struggle, but they were killed by the people behind Qin Yetian. Jin Mingxin walked forward and looked at the wrists of the corpses on the ground. As expected, there were bloodbat tattoos. They were all people of Bloodbat sect. Father, someone is trying to escape. At this time, Jin Debao suddenly shouted. Escape where? Jin Mingxin smiled coldly. All the origin energy in his body surged. An enormous coin about 5 or 6 meters in diameter flew out, trapping a figure in midair. Bang! The coin tightened, and the trapped person was cut in two, dying on the spot. Qin Yetian turned around and looked at Jin Debao in shock. Chapter 176. The reason why Jin Debao was able to discover this assassin was naturally because of the fiend god blood scroll's primordial spirit. Nietian guessed that there would be top assassins from the Bloodbat sect in every key location in the palace. In order to prevent these killers from escaping, he had Jin Debao follow them. Otherwise, with Jin Debao's 5th level essence spirit strength, there was no need for him to appear here at all. Debao. Jin Mingxin glanced at Jin Debao. The latter shook his head slightly, indicating that there was no one else here. Qin Yetian and Jin Mingxin glanced at each other before continuing forward. At the same time, in a dark corner of the imperial palace, 3 figures poked their heads out. It was Nietan, Qiushan Qi Feng, and the other 2. 20 meters to the east and 30 meters to the northeast. Nietian sent a voice transmission to Qiushan and Qi Feng before making a silencing gesture. Qiushan and Qi Feng understood and disappeared in a flash. Nietian's figure also moved, quietly moving forward dozens of meters. A black-clothed figure lurked in the darkness, like a venomous snake waiting for an opportunity to strike. Having said that, the Viper had no idea that it was being targeted by the goshawk. Who is it? The cold killing intent had already reached him. The black-clothed figure reacted, but it was already too late. Puff! The sharp sword light whistled past, and the black-robed figure didn't even have the chance to let out a groan before he fell to the ground dead. Qiushan and Qi Feng appeared again and met up with Nietian. The 3 of them were very ruthless, not giving their opponents any chance to react. These black-clothed men were all cruel and bloodthirsty killers. They would never have thought that one day they would also become little sheep waiting to be slaughtered. Step by step, Nietian's group of 3 approached the virtuous hall of the imperial palace. According to the ideal situation, by the time they entered the virtuous hall, all the assassins hidden in the imperial palace along the way would have been slaughtered. Oh no, someone has broken into the palace. But at this moment, a panicked shout suddenly came from afar. Not good, we've been discovered. Qiushan and Qi Feng's expressions changed at the same time. However, Nietian's expression remained the same, as if nothing had happened. He gestured for the 2 of them to continue walking and ignore them. Righteous Hall of the Imperial Palace Lan Yanhai was like a pile of mud as he slumped to the side of the dragon throne. The leader of the Bloodbat sect, Gao Jin, sat in the middle of the dragon throne. In his hand was a 3-legged wine cup. However, there was no wine in it. He only pretended to be enjoying it. Sect Master, a black figure barged into the main hall, causing the newcomer to stumble and almost fall. Gao Jing's tall and sturdy body suddenly stood up, and he said in a deep voice, "What happened? Why are you so flustered?" Reporting to Sect Master. Someone broke into the Imperial Palace and killed many of our people. The person's voice was trembling. It was obvious that he was extremely nervous. How many have died? Gao Jin's voice was low, and his whole body was filled with a terrifying killing intent. A few dozen. The newcomer was trembling, not daring to raise his head. Trash! Gao Jin suddenly exploded, kicking over the dragon throne in front of him. Lan Yanhai rolled down like a pile of feces. Yes, your subordinate is trash. That person was quite shocked, nodding repeatedly as he retreated. Gao Jin suddenly turned around, slightly raised his arm, and an almost undetectable force floated over. The person in front of him didn't even have the slightest reaction and directly died. Corpse Luo cursed Gu, killing people invisibly. Gao Jin smiled sinisterly and said, "Since you know you are trash, then there is no need to continue living." After killing the person in front of him, Gao Jin didn't even look at him. To him, killing people was as normal as eating and drinking. Who the hell is it to actually dare to kill into the Imperial Palace? Simply courting death. Gao Jin's anger soared to the sky, and as he shouted, over a dozen black-clothed martial artists appeared. Their figures rapidly scuttled out and disappeared into the night. No matter who it is, to obstruct my great plan of revenge, they must be prepared to die. Gao Jin slowly sat down, but there was another figure beside him. If Nietian was here, he would immediately recognize that this figure was Tang Yuyu. But the current Tang Yuyu seemed to have become different. Although she was still beautiful, her eyes were lifeless, and she had lost the sharpness of the past. In the Imperial Palace, Nietian and Xiushan Qi Feng gradually approached the Righteous Virtue main hall. At this time, Nietian suddenly felt a cold wind behind him, and he couldn't help but shout, "Be careful!" Xiushan and Qi Feng turned at the same time, and behind them, over a dozen black-clothed martial artists appeared without a sound. What aura? Xiushan looked at the black-clothed martial artists that appeared in front of him. He actually couldn't feel any signs of life from them, and instead smelled a rotten stench. They don't seem to be human. Qi Feng also discovered something unusual, and his voice trembled slightly. Nietian also frowned slightly and immediately sensed something. He shouted, "Be careful, don't let them come close. These people are goo puppets." Goo puppets. Xiushan and Qi Feng looked at each other and exclaimed in unison. Nietian was right. The dozen or so black-clothed people in front of them were no longer human, but corpse puppets controlled by Gao Jin. The dozen or so corpse puppets were all at the 9th level of the Wanxiang realm. "Oh no, I don't have any sealing scrolls with me." Nietian cried out inwardly. He knew that these puppets were very difficult to kill, but they could be sealed. If Nietian had a dozen or so grade 3 sealing scrolls in his hands, he could easily seal all of the corpse puppets. But now, he could only think of a way to kill these corpse puppets. The corpse puppets were emotionless and did not even have consciousness. They only followed the simplest orders of the goo controller, and they would not stop until they achieved their goal. Whoosh! A corpse puppet was the first to attack, and it even used its primordial spirit. It was a dark black leopard, and it directly pounced at Nietian. "Mister, be careful!" Xiushan reacted extremely quickly, and his first thought was to protect Nietian. An abnormally heavy, edgeless broadsword appeared behind him. It was his primordial spirit, Edgeless Desert Blade. Desert Blade, flying dust. Edgeless Desert Blade slashed down, and a shocking saber light directly broke the black leopard's attack and sent the corpse puppet flying. What a powerful saber aura! Nietian was slightly shocked by the power of Xiushan's saber. He did not expect Xiushan to condense saber aura. A saber user, like a swordsman, needed to condense saber aura and nurture a saber heart. The fact that Xiushan could condense saber aura meant that his talent in the path of the saber was not weak. Although Xiushan's saber aura was powerful, the corpse puppets on the ground did not feel any pain at all. After they got up, they once again rushed at Nietian and the others. Night toppling sword. Nietian did not wait any longer. Sword Absolute Heaven Slash was unleashed, and a 10-meter sword light flew out, forcing the dozen or so corpse puppets to retreat continuously. Qiushan and Qi Feng looked at each other, deeply shocked. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would not have believed that a first-level Wanxiang martial artist could actually have such strength. Chapter 177. Boom! Boom! When Qiushan and Qi Feng saw Nyetian force back the corpse puppets, they immediately attacked at the same time. Qiushan's edgeless desert blade and Qi Feng's mystic frost moon slash appeared. One saber and one sword. The giant spirit true body appeared and slashed down at the same time. Immediately, the surrounding ground trembled and a deep ravine appeared. The corpse puppets were like toys as they were sent flying in the sky. Their bodies were sent flying by the huge shockwave in the air. Some of the corpse puppets that were slashed by the giant spirit true body were broken into several pieces. However, the next moment, a strange scene happened. On the ground, the body that had been broken into several pieces actually joined back together, and the corpse Luo puppet actually stood up again. Qiushan and Qi Feng looked at each other. They had never seen such a situation before and were shocked. Nyetian did not care and said to Qiushan, "Qiushan, I'll leave these puppets to you. Don't let them near you." With that said, Nyetian shouted to Qi Feng, "Let's go." Nyetian did not want to be entangled with these corpse puppets. He wanted to see the puppet's master. All right, Qiushan agreed and slashed with his saber, preventing the puppets from approaching Nyetian and Qi Feng. Nyetian and Qi Feng did not delay any longer and ran toward the Righteous Virtue Hall. In the Righteous Virtue Hall, Gao Jin suddenly stood up and sneered. "You actually killed your way in. You really didn't disappoint me." Tang Yuyu did not say a word. He indifferently walked to the entrance of the hall and waited for Nyetian to come over. Nyetian and Qi Feng were extremely fast and arrived at the entrance of the hall in a moment. Courting death. Qi Feng sneered when he saw Tang Yuyu from afar. He stabbed out with a mystic frost moon slash and a massive force whistled over. The attack of a giant spirit realm martial artist was extremely powerful. Wait! Nyetian did not react immediately. When he saw the figure at the entrance of the hall, he shouted in fright, but it was already too late. Bang! The mysterious frost moon slash's giant spirit avatar descended, and the 40-meter-long sword smashed down like a huge stone pillar. A deep ravine immediately appeared in front of the Righteous Virtue Palace, as if it was a crack in the earth caused by an earthquake. Tang Yuyu's reaction was extremely fast, and he actually avoided the fatal blow. However, one of his arms was affected by the shockwave and was broken in half. "Mr. Nye, do you know her?" Qi Feng was stunned, and then his expression changed. He saw that Tang Yuyu's severed arm had grown back. Seeing this scene, Nyetian was stunned at first, and then he came to an understanding and roared furiously, "Bastard!" In the distance, Tang Yu looked at Nyetian and Qi Feng expressionlessly. His eyes were lifeless like a piece of cold wood. "Mr. Nye, could it be that Qi Feng also realized something. Looking at Nyetian's reaction, it was obvious that Nyetian knew Tang Yuyu. Qi Feng couldn't help but worry. "She's been cursed." Nyetian suddenly stood up, his eyes filled with killing intent. Tang Yuyu was also cursed by Gao Jin's corpse Luo curse, and became his corpse Luo puppet. Tang Yuyu was a top assassin of the Bloodbath sect, and she was also Gao Jin's adopted daughter. The latter actually turned her into a corpse Luo puppet. Gao Jin's viciousness and ruthlessness could be seen at a glance. Nyetian rushed forward furiously, but Tang Yuyu was emotionless. The nine-winged dragon crow's primordial spirit appeared behind him, and he put his palms together. The moment he attacked, he used a killer move, reverse cross slash. Cross-shaped crow feather blades appeared in the air and attacked straight at Nyetian. Nyetian didn't panic. He used sword absolute heaven slash again, but this time, a sword shield appeared in front of him. Bang! With a muffled sound, Nyetian's figure retreated several steps, but he didn't suffer any injuries. Although his current strength was only at the first level of the all-creation realm, His true battle prowess wasn't weaker than a martial artist at the 9th level of the all-creation realm. Taking Tang Yuyu's attack head-on didn't burden him at all. Nye Tian stabilized his body and suddenly moved forward, approaching Tang Yuyu. The distance between the two was less than 5 meters. Qi Feng watched from the side, and his heart leaped to his throat. He didn't know what Nye Tian wanted to do, but Nye Tian and Tang Yuyu clearly had an unusual relationship, so he didn't dare to attack again. The reason why Nye Tian approached Tang Yuyu was because he wanted to figure out what kind of curse the latter was under. Tang Yuyu naturally wouldn't let Nye Tian observe. The 9 pairs of wings on his back suddenly activated, and an even more terrifying attack attacked Nye Tian. Nye Tian didn't dare to be careless when approaching Tang Yuyu at such a close distance. He used the flying leaf swan steps and moved left and right, maintaining a relatively close distance with Tang Yuyu. Tang Yuyu made several moves in a row, but all of them were easily resolved by Nye Tian. At this time, a black-robed figure appeared and stood motionlessly at the entrance of the hall, as if very interested in the battle between Nye Tian and Tang Yuyu. This figure was none other than the Bloodbat sect master, Gao Jin. Qi Feng was 200 meters away from Gao Jin, but he could feel a rotten stench coming from the latter's body from afar. He even sensed a terrifying killing intent. Qi Feng immediately tensed up, worried that Gao Jin would suddenly attack Nye Tian. But at the same time, he was very worried because he could feel that Gao Jin's strength was above his. Even he might not be Gao Jin's match. Gao Jin watched the battle excitedly from the side and wasn't in a hurry to attack. Nye Tian, who the hell are you? You escaped Tang Yuyu's pursuit time and time again with the strength of the Wanxiang first tier. You can even walk out of the burial cloud abyss. It seems that I've underestimated you, Gao Jin said in his heart, his whole body unknowingly exuding a thick, killing intent. All along, Gao Jin only felt that Nye Tian was just a little grasshopper who occasionally jumped a little jubilantly. Even if Nye Tian came out of the burial cloud abyss, Gao Jin still didn't take him seriously. A little loach that popped out of a small place couldn't cause any big waves, even if he stood at the top of the sky. It wasn't until this moment, when Nye Tian led his men into the palace, that Gao Jin realized that he had underestimated the little grasshopper Nye Tian. The little loach that he had always looked down on was really going to overturn the heavens now. Nye Tian and Tang Yuyu fought for a while and quickly pulled apart. The corpse Luo curse Gu could devour a martial artist's bloodline and soul. Those who were afflicted with the corpse Luo curse Gu would completely lose their consciousness. However, Tang Yu hadn't been afflicted with the corpse Luo curse Gu for long, so there was still a chance to save him. Back off! At this moment, Gao Jin waved his hand, and Tang Yuyu automatically retreated to the side. Nye Tian, we finally meet. Gao Jin walked over step by step. It seemed that with every step he took, the stench in the air became thicker. Nye Tian raised his head abruptly and looked at Gao Jin, who was walking over step by step. Boundless fury instantly rose in his eyes, and he said coldly, Bloodbat sect master Gao Jin, I really didn't expect that you would dare to cultivate an evil technique like the corpse Luo curse Gu art. Nye Tian had long sensed Gao Jin's existence and knew that Gao Jin cultivated the corpse Luo curse Gu art. Chapter 178. Corpse Luo curse Gu was an evil curse Gu technique passed down from the most ominous land of Mini Summer World, the land of Blood Massacre. Gao Jin had entered the land of Blood Massacre to train and obtained the corpse Luo curse Gu by chance. The person who taught him the corpse Luo curse Gu had once told him that there was only one corpse Luo curse Gu in this world. There was no second copy. Then, how did Nye Tian know that Gao Jin cultivated the corpse Luo curse Gu? Nye Tian smiled faintly and said, the corpse Luo curse Gu uses one's own blood essence to feed the corpse Luo worms. The corpse Luo worms are colorless and odorless. They are invisible to the naked eye, but they can invade a martial artist's body without anyone noticing and devour the martial artist's bloodline and soul, causing the martial artist to lose their consciousness and become the puppet of the Gu controller. Am I right? You, Gao Jin's tall and sturdy body shook as if he was struck by lightning. He immediately roared. How did you know? Nie Tian was talking about the core secrets of the corpse Luo Kursgu. How could he know these? The corpse Luo Kursgu is indeed very powerful, but the corpse Luo Kursgu that you cultivate is only an incomplete volume. Nie Tian did not answer Gao Jin's question. Instead, he smiled eerily. If I am not wrong, your body is already riddled with holes. You have to endure the pain of being devoured by the worms every day. If this goes on, you won't be able to endure the devouring of the corpse Luo worms and become a corpse puppet in the end. Nonsense. Nie Tian's words made Gao Jin stiffen for a moment. Then he suddenly flew into a rage and bellowed. Nie Tian smiled faintly and ridiculed. So pitiful, feeding the corpse Luo worms your whole life. But in the end, you are going to be devoured by them. Should I say this is playing with fire and getting burned? Nie Tian was not unfamiliar with the corpse Luo Kursgu. He was very familiar with it, because he had once fought with the creator of the corpse Luo Kursgu, corpse Luo Demon Lord, for 3 days and 3 nights. Corpse Luo Demon Lord, one of the 9 demon lords under Demon Emperor Qiwu Shao, was very strong and cultivated the corpse Luo Kursgu. Nie Tian recognized the corpse Luo worms on Tang Yuyu's body, so he knew that Gao Jing cultivated the corpse Luo Kursgu formula. Back then, corpse Luo Demon Lord had already cultivated the corpse Luo Kursgu art to the limit and formed the ultimate corpse Luo demon body. It was extremely terrifying, and everywhere it passed, not a single blade of grass could be seen. If Nie Tian did not have the war god technique of 9 extremes to protect his body and the invincible AO sword art, it would be hard to say who would win the battle with the corpse demon king. Gao Jing's corpse Luo Kursgu art paled in comparison to corpse Luo demon lord. It was not worth mentioning. Although Nie Tian did not know where Gao Jing's corpse Luo Kursgu art came from, he estimated that the latter's corpse Luo Kursgu art was at most 1/9 of the complete Gu art. It was a miracle that Gao Jing could live until now by cultivating the incomplete corpse Luo Kursgu art. Nie Tian's words were like a heavy hammer knocking on Gao Jing's head, blasting him into a daze. He froze on the spot for a long time without any reaction. After a long while, Gao Jing finally came to his senses and roared viciously. Who the hell are you, Nie Tian? You are just a man about to die. What does it matter if you know who I am or not? Nie Tian's face darkened slightly, dripping with murderous intent. The Bloodbat sect killed Nie Tian's father and clansmen. Nie Tian must avenge this. Even if there was no enmity, just based on Gao Jing's cultivation of the corpse Luo Kursgu art, Nie Tian would definitely not allow him to live. Want to kill me? Gao Jing laughed coldly and said in a mocking tone, with your Wan Xiang first tier strength. Nie Tian took a step forward fearlessly and said calmly, you can try. Gao Jing had the strength of a Wan Xiang 5th tier giant. Among all the people Nie Tian had met, apart from the Mo family, only Rui Qinyu and the dwarf Tong Fu could contend against him. Gao Jing also cultivated the corpse Luo Kursgu art. Even though it was only an incomplete version, it was still very troublesome. Qi Feng held his breath at the side and was ready to attack at any time. He did not think that Nie Tian really had the ability to fight Gao Jing. Even if Nie Tian was a Wan Xiang first tier, it would be very difficult for him to cross the gap between the Wan Xiang realm and the Wan Xiang realm. The difference of one realm was like the difference between heaven and earth. The gap between the Wan Xiang realm and the Wan Xiang realm was not so easy to bridge. You're courting death. Gao Jing was completely enraged. He suddenly stomped on the ground and leaped dozens of meters into the air. Then he waved his long sleeves, and a sharp and decisive killing intent immediately spread. Mr. Nye, be careful, Qi Feng shouted when he felt the terrifying killing intent that was almost tangible. Mere ant die. At this moment, Gao Jing shouted in the air. All the essence energy in his body was like a galloping giant beast. It suddenly burst out and formed a bloody demon statue that was nearly 100 meters large. Corpse Luo demon body. Nie Tian looked up and saw the 100-meter-tall demon statue behind Gao Jing. He did not expect that Gao Jing had cultivated the corpse Luo demon body. Corpse Luo Curse Guart. To cultivate the corpse Luo demon body, one had to destroy one's own essence spirit and use the destroyed essence spirit as the blood vessel of the corpse Luo demon body. Then, one had to use the essence spirits of other martial artists to feed the corpse Luo demon body. Finally, one could cultivate the corpse Luo demon body. Back then, the corpse Luo demon lord's corpse Luo demon body used the essence spirits of 100,000 martial artists as a sacrifice to form the corpse Luo demon body that was tens of thousands of meters large. It was unimaginably terrifying. Gao Jing's corpse Luo demon body was only 100 meters large and was far from the corpse Luo demon lord's corpse Luo demon body. However, Nie Tian estimated that to form such a corpse Luo demon body, he would need at least the essence spirits of 100 manifestation realm martial artists. Gao Jing was indeed ruthless. Corpse Luo blood hand. Just as Nie Tian was shocked, a shout came from the sky, and the terrifying corpse Luo demon body slammed its palm. The air suddenly tightened, and a giant blood hand phantom appeared. It was like a steep mountain had suddenly collapsed and smashed towards Nie Tian. The terrifying corpse Luo blood hand covered the sky and earth. If this palm landed, the buildings within dozens of meters would probably turn into ruins. Mr. Nie. Chi Feng was shocked and slightly stunned. By the time he reacted, he was already a step too late. Rumble! There was a loud sound, and the surrounding ground shook. The entire righteous virtue hall seemed to shake and seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. On the ground, a giant handprint appeared, and the ground actually sank several meters. Dust flew, and rocks flew. The scene was extremely terrifying. Nie Tian, you are just an ant. Gao Jing laughed wildly in the sky. In front of me, you are fated to lose miserably. The eerie voice echoed in the night like a merciless death knell. Is that so? But before Gao Jing's voice finished, a mocking voice sounded again. Nie Tian jumped out of the giant handprint pit and scathed. He was not even injured. Chi Feng suddenly heard Nie Tian's voice. As if he was in a dream, he suddenly turned around and saw Nie Tian's figure. At this time, Nie Tian's entire body was covered in dark black armor. The armor burned with flames and looked extremely strange. Chapter 179. In the Imperial Palace, the battle continued. 3,000 chops of wild blade. Qiushan roared angrily and slashed out with edgeless desert blade. Blade chi spread out, and countless blade shadows scattered out wildly, forcing back all the corpse puppets that pounced over. These corpse puppets' strength was not low. Furthermore, they had undying bodies and were very difficult to deal with. Qiushan remembered Nie Tian's exhortation and did not let these puppets near him. But if this carried on, Qiushan's essence energy would be exhausted very soon. At that time, he would not be these puppets' match anymore. Just as Qiushan was frowning and worrying, several figures suddenly dashed out in the distance. President Jin. Qiushan saw Jin Mingxin and the rest and immediately shouted. Jin Mingxin sprinted over, and several people met up with Qiushan. Uncle Qiu, where's boss, and Principal Qi? Jean de Bao did not see Nie Tian and Chi Feng and asked nervously. Mr. and Chi Feng went to the Righteous Virtue Great Hall, leaving me alone to deal with these troublesome fellows, Qiushan said, and slashed out again. Qin Yetian attacked at the same time. The rushing thunder beast's enormous giant spirit true body appeared and slapped out with a palm, sending several corpse puppets flying into the air. But the next instant, the corpse puppets recovered to normal and pounced over without a care for anything again. Were these things? Why can't they be killed? Jin Mingxin's heart involuntarily sank when he saw that the corpse puppets could actually regrow severed limbs and seemed to not feel pain at all. Qiushan frowned and said, "These are goo worm puppets. They're very troublesome and very hard to kill." Mr. Nie exhorted not to let them get close. Jin Mingxin, Qin Yetian, and the rest drew a cold breath. their eyes revealing unconcealable shock. Damn it, don't tell me we have to keep playing with them? Jean de Bayo cursed, but the fiend god blood scroll in his body suddenly reacted at this moment, making his little face shocked. Jean de Bayo had been in close seclusion for over half a month. Not only did his strength rise to the 5th level origin spirit realm, but he also successfully activated 20 of the 3,000 fiend god seals in his body. With his current strength, he could only withstand 20 of the 3,000 fiend god seals. Not only that, but Jean de Bayo's fiend god blood scroll primordial spirit had also opened. But on it, there were lines of gray runes that he could not understand at all. At this moment, the fiend god seal in Jean de Bayo's body suddenly became active, as if it was eager to test its prey. De Bayo, what's wrong? Jean Mingxin noticed his son's abnormality and was worried that there was a problem with the seal in his body. Jean de Bayo chuckled and said, Uncle Qiushan, knock down these puppets again. I have a way to kill them. Qiushan was slightly taken aback, but the corpse Luo puppets were charging at him again, so he didn't have much time to think. Desert Blade, reverse killing chop. The Desert Saber edgeless slashed horizontally, and the saber chi condensed into a visible light wave, directly cutting the first corpse puppet that rushed over into 2 halves. Fiend God seal. Jean de Bayo seized the opportunity and a golden flash suddenly shot out from his body, hitting the corpse Luo puppet that had been cut in half. Aya! The corpse puppet shrieked as if it had been electrocuted, then fell to the ground dead. Jean de Bayo retracted the seal, and one of the gray runes on the God-Fiend blood scroll was activated. Dead? Qiushan saw that the corpse Luo puppet hadn't recovered, and the shock in his heart was revealed on his face. He never imagined that the nearly immortal corpse Luo puppet would be killed by a seal in Jean de Bayo's body. Nietian once said that these corpse Luo puppets were very difficult to kill, but with a 3rd-rank sealing scroll, they could be easily sealed. The seal in Jean de Bayo's body was one of the 3,000 fiend god seals, one of the 10 strongest seals. Not to mention a mere corpse puppet. Even if it was something even more terrifying, it would be able to easily seal it. The power of the 20 fiend god seals activated in Jean de Bayo's body was at least equivalent to a 5th-rank sealing scroll. As the fiend god seals were activated one by one, the combined power of these fiend god seals would become even stronger. He's really dead? Qin Yetian, Jean Mingxin, and Lan Bingchun were also astonished. They didn't expect the seal in Jean de Bayo's body to be so abnormal. Jean Mingxin smiled happily and suddenly shouted, Who said my son is trash? My son is a peerless genius. Qiushan and Qin Yetian looked at each other. They didn't know what was wrong with Jean Mingxin. Why would he suddenly say something like that? However, Jean de Bayo understood why Jean Mingxin would say such a thing. When Jean de Bayo was in Tyrant Cloud Academy, because he had stagnated for 5 years, he was jokingly called a trash that only appeared once in 100 years. Although Jean de Bayo's mentality was excellent and didn't suffer any setbacks, it was inevitable that he would feel sad. As a father, how could Jean Mingxin not know his son's situation in the academy? Even if he was the richest man in the royal capital, even if he was the president of the Chamber of Commerce, he couldn't change the ridicule Jean de Bayo received. Now that Jean de Bayo suddenly displayed his might, Jean Mingxin couldn't suppress the excitement in his heart, and the words he suppressed in his heart blurted out. Heaven and earth slash. Jean Mingxin was incomparably excited. The world coin spirit appeared, and a white light slashed at a corpse Luo puppet, and its head fell to the ground. Jean de Bayo chuckled, and a seal shot out from his body. The corpse Luo puppet immediately died, and another rune on the fiend god blood scroll in his body was activated. The cooperation between father and son was very tacit, and it was very perfect. Qiushan and Qin Yetian didn't make a move, and they only watched the performance from the side. In just a short moment, over 10 corpse Luo puppets were all lying on the ground, unable to get up again. Jean de Bayo was very happy. 16 runes on the fiend god blood scroll had been activated. Moreover, he had used 16 fiend god seals. This meant that he could awaken another 16 fiend god seals. The Fiend God Seals required a lot of time to completely refine the power of the Corpse Luo puppets. During this period of time, Jean de Bayo's strength would rise again, and his body would be able to withstand more and more Fiend God Seals. Thinking of this, Jean de Bayo couldn't help but be excited. After cleaning up the Corpse Luo puppets, Qiushan suddenly thought of something and said, "Let's quickly go to the Righteous Virtue Hall." Mr. Nye and Qi Feng might already be fighting with the Bloodbat sect leader. Only then did everyone react, and they all rushed to the Righteous Virtue Hall. In the public square, in front of the Righteous Virtue Hall, Nye Tian's entire body was enveloped in a black armor. This was his astral soul, flame demon armor. Right now, Nye Tian's primal chaos origin coffin had 3 astral souls: flame demon armor, Albone demonic flame, and flame demon spear. Flame demon armor was a defense-type astral soul. Even though Nye Tian didn't like it, it saved his life at the crucial moment. If not for flame demon armor, Gao Jin's Corpse Luo Bloodhand earlier would have severely injured Nye Tian, even if he didn't die. He didn't die? Gao Jin looked down at Nye Tian, and when he saw that not only was the latter not dead, but he wasn't even injured, his face revealed extreme shock. He was a 5th-level giant spirit cultivator, and he cultivated the terrifying Corpse Luo Curse Guard. Even a giant spirit realm cultivator would find it hard to endure that palm earlier. Chapter 180. Not only could Gao Jin not figure out why Nye Tian could survive, but Qi Feng also could not figure it out. Qi Feng estimated that even with his strength, he would most likely be seriously injured if he forcefully resisted Gao Jin's palm just now. Nye Tian could actually receive Gao Jin's palm with ease and was unscathed. This simply subverted Qi Feng's martial Dao understanding. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, Qi Feng absolutely would not believe the scene before him. Qi Feng saw that Nye Tian had used many heaven-defying martial skills. He cannot imagine how a teenager could master so many martial skills. Even if Nye Tian really had countless martial skills, did he have the time to cultivate them? One had to know that the higher the rank of the martial skill, the harder it was to cultivate, and the higher the martial Dao talent required. If one had to explain Nye Tian, there was only one reason that could barely explain it. Nye Tian was a peerless martial Dao genius that was 1 in a trillion. Nye Tian, do you really think you'll be able to survive my palm strike? After a while, Gao Jin calmed down, and his killing intent intensified. The sharp killing intent almost made the surrounding air freeze. Nye Tian was still so young, but his strength was already so formidable. If such a person was given a certain amount of time, wouldn't he be heaven-defying in the future? At this moment, Gao Jin was determined to kill Nye Tian at all costs. Otherwise, if Nye Tian became stronger, he would be the one to die. But how could Gao Jin know that Nye Tian had the same thoughts as him at this moment? He must kill the other party. Both sides already held the belief that they would fight to the death. Today's battle was destined to be earth-shattering. Nye Tian looked at Gao Jin in the air and said Gao Jin coldly, "Gao Jin, you are too naive. I admire your ruthlessness by cultivating the Corpse Luo Curse Gu art and condensing the Corpse Luo demonic body. But unfortunately, you encountered me. In front of me, you are destined to be a tragedy." Arrogant, Gao Jin roared. The huge Corpse Luo demonic body trembled, and a ferocious punch smashed down from the air. Nye Tian was fearless and was just about to make a move when he heard an angry roar behind him. "Don't you dare harm my family's teacher." The Autumn Mountain Man was still in the distance, but his roar could already be heard. Seeing a giant made of flesh and blood attacking Nye Tian from afar, Qiushan was instantly enraged. The edgeless giant spirit true body of the desert saber appeared, and a ferocious aura roared between heaven and earth. Desert Blade Edgeless, Reverse Kill. The blade, which was dozens of meters long, flashed through the night sky, and a powerful blade aura attacked the Corpse Luo demon body. The peerlessly overbearing aura, coupled with the vigorous and heavy blade, immediately gave people a great sense of oppression. Qiushan's move was extremely domineering. Even Gao Jin couldn't ignore it. However, Gao Jin wanted to kill Nie Tian too much. At this moment, he chose to disregard everything. Completely disregarding Qiu Shan's attack, Gao Jin heavily smashed his fist down, determined to end Nie Tian's life in one move. Mystic Frost Moon Slash, extreme killing against the current. At this critical moment, Qi Feng also chose to act. With a Mystic Frost Moon Slash in his hand, he leaped high into the air, and a huge sword light pierced towards the corpse Luo demon body's throat. You want to kill me just like that? Childish. In the face of Gao Jin's all-out attack, Nie Tian was not flustered at all. Instead, he smiled and abruptly turned his body. Like a falling leaf in the wind, he soared into the air at an unbelievable angle and speed, and his body actually shifted a distance of several dozen meters. Gao Jin couldn't believe his eyes when he saw Nie Tian's body twisting in a strange way, and he let out an exclamation. Flame Demon Spear. Almost at the same time that Nie Tian retreated, a black spear suddenly appeared in his hand. The spear was 2 meters long, and the spearhead floated with strange black flames, emitting an extremely violent aura. The black spear was the other astral soul of Nie Tian, the Flame Demon Spear. This was the first time that Nie Tian used 2 astral souls at the same time. In order to kill Gao Jin, he didn't care about the price. Without hesitation, Nie Tian stabbed out with the Flame Demon Spear, colliding with the corpse Luo demon body's huge fist. Bang! Pooh! In the next moment, Qiu Shan and Qi Feng's attacks arrived at almost the same time, heavily striking the corpse Luo demon body. In the air, the corpse Luo demon body's huge body tilted slightly. Under the huge attack of Edgeless Desert Blade, it was actually sent flying. At the same time, the corpse Luo demon body's shoulder was pierced by the Mystic Frost Moon Slash, and a wound that was several meters wide appeared. And Nie Tian's Flame Demon Spear also smashed into the corpse Luo demon body's fist, breaking 2 of its fingers. The corpse Luo demon body's huge body flipped in the air and then landed steadily. Gao Jin suddenly raised his head, and the black robe on his head was torn open, revealing a face that was riddled with thousands of holes. 2 pitch-black eye sockets stared at Nie Tian like an enraged beast. The corpse Luo demon body's defense was too strong. Even in a situation where its attacks missed, it was still not heavily injured after enduring 3 days of killing attacks from Qiu Shan, Qi Feng, and Nie Tian. At this moment, Jin Mingxin and the others rushed over. Boss, are you all right? Jean DeBeo rushed to Nie Tian's side and asked worriedly. Nie Tian shook his head slightly, indicating that he was fine. Jean DeBeo looked at the Flame Demon armor and Flame Demon Spear on Nie Tian and felt strange. When did Boss get such a cool set of equipment? However, Jean DeBeo's attention immediately turned to Gao Jin. He pointed at the huge corpse Luo demon body and asked, "What the hell is this big guy?" Nie Tian didn't explain too much to Jean DeBeo. He suddenly sensed the aura of the corpse Luo demon body and immediately understood something. He asked, "You sealed the corpse Luo demon body?" "Yes." Jean DeBeo nodded proudly and said, "Are those little puppets completely useless? I'll kill one with each God Fiend seal." "Very good." Nie Tian just remembered that the 3,000 God Fiend seals was simply the best weapon against the corpse Luo demon body. Jean DeBeo felt a little excited about the God Fiend blood scripture. He suddenly saw Tang Yuyu in the distance and chuckled. "Boss, there's another little puppet there. I'll go and subdue her immediately." Nie Tian saw Tang Yuyu and immediately jumped in fright. He quickly said, "This person can't be sealed." Tang Yuyu had become a corpse Luo demon body. When Gao Jin died, there would be a chance to save him. If he was sealed by Jean DeBeo, even a Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal wouldn't be able to save him. Why? Jean DeBeo was slightly stunned. Nie Tian didn't explain too much. He said to Jin Mingxin and the others at the side, "President Jin, we don't need you here. You just need to guard the palace gate." Gao Jin was too strong. Even if Jin Mingxin and the others stayed here, it would be useless. They would only be cannon fodder. Nietian and Shoshan Qifeng were enough to deal with Gao Jin. Okay, Jin Mingxin agreed. He nodded to Qin Yetian and immediately left. Qin Yetian saw how fierce Gao Jin was. He didn't want to stay any longer and was about to leave. Lan Bingshan was scared witless. She closely followed Jin Mingxin and the others and quickly left. At this time, Gao Jin was extremely furious. He roared at Nietian, "A bunch of small shrimps. Even if you join hands, you're still small shrimps. Do you think you can go against me with just your strength? What a joke. Today, I'll let you experience my true strength." Chapter 181. Haha. The power of the corpse demon body is not something you can imagine. Enjoy the feeling of despair. Amidst the sinister and ear-piercing laughter, the corpse demon body increased in size again. In the blink of an eye, the originally 100-meter-tall corpse Luo demon body doubled in size, becoming 200 meters tall. Hiss Dash, seeing this scene, Nietian couldn't help but take a deep breath, and his expression became a lot more nervous. Originally, when Nietian and Shoshan Qifeng teamed up against Gao Jin, they couldn't gain any advantage. Moreover, the corpse demon body's defense was amazing, and it could still handle the attacks of 3 people at the same time with ease. At this moment, the corpse demon body doubled in size, and the aura of its body increased by more than several times. Nietian estimated that the current corpse demon body's defense was more than 2 to 3 times higher than before, and its combat power was even more terrifying. This guy actually didn't use his full strength just now. Nietian frowned slightly. Just now, he could use the flame demon armor to block the corpse demon body's attack, but now it wasn't certain. Shoshan and Qifeng's expressions were even more nervous, and they looked at Nietian at the same time. Although the two of them were at the 3rd level of the giant spirit realm, in front of the corpse demon body, they weren't much stronger than Nietian with the flame demon armor, and they were even weaker. But even so, Shoshan's eyes were still abnormally firm. His life was saved by Nietian, so even if he had to die, he would not retreat even half a step. Qifeng's expression was calm, and he also had the same thoughts. "Die, you little scum." Gao Jin didn't give Nietian and the others any time to think. As the rumbling voice fell, the huge corpse demon blood hand appeared again, and the terrifying blood hand shadow pressed down from 100 meters in the sky. Just this aura made Shoshan Qifeng feel suffocated. "Mistinya, you go first. We are here." The two did not retreat, but instead went forward and shouted at the same time. Desert Blade Edgeless and Black Frost Moon slash attacked at the same time, rushing towards the corpse demon blood hand, wanted to win a chance for Nietian to escape. A cold smile appeared at the corners of Nietian's mouth. Fleeing in the face of battle was never his style. In his previous life, Nietian had experienced countless bitter battles. No matter how strong the enemy was, he would never retreat. What kind of commander would abandon his subordinates and flee in the middle of a battle? Bone Demon Flame. As he thought of this, the primal chaos origin coffin in Nietian's body trembled, and his 3rd astral soul surged out in response. Bone Demon Flame. This was Nietian's 3rd and final astral soul. To inscribe the Bone Owl Devil Flame, Nietian used a total of 5 days, far more time and energy than the other 2 astral souls. Not only that, the Bone Owl Devil Flame was a pure attack-type astral soul. Its might was beyond imagination. In the next moment, Nietian unleashed an inexhaustible amount of spiritual power, which rapidly condensed into countless skulls. Each and every one of the skulls was wreathed in bizarre black flames, which were exactly the same as the black flames on his Flame Demon armor and Flame Demon spear. Flame Demon armor, Flame Demon spear, Bone Demon Flame. These 3 astral souls had an extremely close connection, as though they were a set of astral souls. This was also the reason why Nietian would inscribe these 3 astral souls. Bone Demon Flame, break for me. Nietian couldn't care less. With a roar of rage, the Bone Demon Flame surged out from the Flame Demon spear, and a terrifying aura instantly condensed. Ball after ball of bone demon flame intertwined in the air, forming a demonic flame net with a radius of 10 meters. However, this 10 meters wide demonic flame net in front of the 200-meter-tall corpse demon body was too insignificant. Gao Jin looked at Nie Tian's almost comical actions and actually laughed wildly. An ant trying to shake a big tree, laughably overestimating yourself. Nie Tian's attack this time was indeed a little like an ant trying to trip an elephant. Even Qiushan and Qi Feng felt that Nie Tian's actions were a little puzzling. However, Nie Tian stubbornly persisted in thrusting his spear forward. There was no longer any room for retreat. Puff! In the next instant, the demonic flame net and the corpse demon blood hand collided. Nie Tian's entire body actually submerged into the enormous corpse demon blood hand. Mister! Seeing the situation, Qiushan was quite frightened and shouted, "Die!" Gao Jin seized the opportunity. The corpse demon hand clenched, actually wanted to squeeze Nie Tian to death in the palm of his hand. Nie Tian had already entered the corpse demon blood hand and immediately felt the stench of decay become even thicker, almost making him unable to breathe. But in the next instant, he felt traces of star power coming from the 10th origin meridian, making him feel refreshed. The more times he used star power and star souls, the more Nie Tian felt the mystical power of star power. He gradually understood what the so-called star power, the source of power, meant. Star power had a suppressive effect on almost all kinds of power. Whether it was ordinary martial artists' different attributes of essence, energy, or the power of devil fire, or the current corpse demon blood hand. Star power all had a very strong suppressive effect. It was as if star power was another kind of power that transcended other powers. Nie Tian believed that if he could thoroughly comprehend and awaken the star power on the origin star stone, he could definitely possess the power to reverse the firmament and devour heaven and earth. Now, Nie Tian used 3 star souls at the same time. This was something he had never tried before. He discovered that using multiple star souls at the same time required a lot of mental strength. Fortunately, his mental strength far exceeded ordinary martial artists. Otherwise, not to mention using 3 star souls at the same time, even inscribing the simplest star soul would be a problem. Nie Tian already knew that the most important parts of an astral soul were the star energy and spiritual energy. As long as he awakened enough star energy and possessed a higher level of spiritual energy, he would be able to quickly carve out an astral soul, even if it was an extremely complicated one. Moreover, with the increase in mental strength, the power of star souls would also increase. If the same star soul was used by other martial artists, the power would definitely not be as strong in the hands of Nie Tian, because Nie Tian's mental strength was high enough. At this moment, what surprised Nie Tian even more was that he actually felt that using 3 star souls at the same time, the combined power was very strong, almost to a point that he did not dare to hope for. This undoubtedly meant that the star souls had a mutual support effect. However, this could also be because the Flame Demon Armor, Flame Demon Spear, and Owlbone Devil Flame Star Souls were a set of combination star souls. Boom! Just at this moment, the fire net formed by the Owlbone Devil Flame suddenly wreaked havoc, as if the power contained in each ball of flame expanded several times. Nie Tian estimated that this attack from the Owlbone Devil Flame was enough to instantly kill a giant spirit martial artist. It was just that he did not know what kind of damage this kind of attack would cause to the corpse demon body. At the moment when the power of the Owlbone Devil Flame skyrocketed, Gao Jin suddenly felt a sense of threat, and his expression changed. However, it was already too late. Chapter 182. Qiushan and Qi Feng were stunned when they heard the huge explosion above their heads. Immediately, they sensed the terrifying blast. Their expressions changed, and they gave up attacking and turned to retreat. Boom! There was another explosion. Strange black flames surged out of the corpse Luo demon body's bloody hand, causing its entire hand to explode. At this moment, Nie Tian leaped out. The bone owl demonic flame was like maggots on a bone, burning along the corpse Luo demon body's arm like a black fire snake. However, This fire snake was composed of countless burning skulls. What'd you do to me?" Gao Jin screamed at the top of his lungs. Half of the corpse Luo demon body's arm was burned to ashes in the blink of an eye. "Corpse Luo demon body, my corpse Luo demon body." Gao Jin almost went mad as he wailed in pain. The corpse Luo demon body was formed by Gao Jin destroying his own origin spirit and then feeding it with the origin spirits of 200 all-creation martial artists. This was his greatest trump card. He didn't expect that in front of Nie Tian, a mere first-level all-creation martial artist, it would be so vulnerable. Just now, Gao Jin had mocked Nie Tian's actions as an ant trying to shake a tree. Now he had been slapped in the face by his own mockery, and he had paid a heavy price. Nie Tian's figure landed, but he was stunned on the spot. Even he didn't expect the power of the combination Star Soul to be so powerful. One had to know that Gao Jin was a 5th-level giant spirit martial artist and someone who had condensed the corpse Luo demon body. The power of the combination Star Soul is incredible. I have to study it more in the future. This was the first time he used the combination Star Soul. Nie Tian was deeply impressed by this terrifying power and couldn't contain his excitement. Qiushan and Qi Feng were scared silly when they saw the corpse Luo demon body's miserable state. Now, they finally understood why Nie Tian dared to charge straight up. The strength that Nie Tian displayed had subverted Qi Feng's understanding of martial arts time and time again. Qi Feng even had an unreal feeling, as though he was in a dream. Nie Tian looked at Gao Jin and gradually realized the power of the Owl-Bone Devil Flame. It seemed that the Owl-Bone Devil Flame couldn't be extinguished and would only stop when the corpse Luo demon body was completely incinerated. Gao Jin immediately realized this and made up his mind. He raised the corpse Luo demon body's other arm. Bam! With a dull sound, the corpse Luo demon body broke its own arm. The huge corpse Luo's arm fell from the sky, and instantly a rotten stench filled the air. Not good. Don't let this aura approach you. Nie Tian immediately sensed countless corpse-sifting worms flying out of the severed arm. With a shout, Sword Chi surged out of his body and enveloped him. Upon hearing Nie Tian's warning, Qiushan and Qi Feng hastily activated their blade energy and sword light to protect themselves, preventing the corpse-sifting worms from approaching them. The corpse-sifting worms were colorless, odorless, and extremely small. They were difficult to detect with the naked eye, and if one wasn't paying attention, they could easily invade a cultivator's body. However, as long as a martial artist put up a slight defense, they could easily prevent the corpse-sifting insects from invading. The corpse-sifting insects needed a martial artist's blood essence and soul as food. Their reproduction speed was very fast, but once they were exposed to the air, if they couldn't find a host within minutes, they would die. Nie Tian did not care about the broken arm of the corpse Luo devil body, and hurriedly shouted to Qiushan Qi Feng, "Kill him!" Nie Tian had already used the Owl-Bone Devil Flame just now, and the aura of the Flame Demon Armor and Flame Demon Spear had also started to weaken and would soon disappear. If he couldn't kill Gao Jin before the Star Soul disappeared, it would be troublesome. Only then did Qiushan and Qi Feng react. Seeing that they had no time to lose, they smiled at each other and attacked at the same time. Desert Saber is edgeless. Saber Mark has no path. Frost Moon Slash, extreme killing against the water. Qiushan and Qi Feng roared angrily at the same time. At this moment, they would not hold back at all. Edgeless Desert Blade and Mystic Frost Moon Beheader. One was a saber spirit, while the other was a sword spirit. Furthermore, their primordial spirit aptitude was not low. They were considered to be top primordial spirits among the martial artists' primordial spirits. The saber was the leader of all weapons, and the sword was the supreme of all weapons. The saber spirit and sword spirit were the most tyrannical and sharp existences among the weapon spirits. Moreover, Qiushan walked the path of the saber path and cultivated saber chi, which was much stronger than ordinary saber spirit martial artists. Although Qi Feng did not walk the path of the sword path, just his 3rd-level giant spirit martial artist strength The power of his sword attack was absolutely not to be underestimated. A bunch of ants, I will kill you all. Facing the joint attack of Qiu Shan and Qi Feng, Gao Jin roared angrily. The corpse Luo devil body suddenly swayed, and its remaining arm smashed down. Corpse Luo devil body, corpse Luo annihilation. The tyrannical attack was actually accompanied by boundless astral winds. Corpse Luo annihilation. Nie Tian's expression changed when he saw this scene. He was very familiar with this move. It was the killer move of the corpse Luo curse Guard. Even Ye Tian almost died to this move back then. However, Gao Jin's corpse Luo annihilation was only an incomplete move. It could not display the power that corpse Luo annihilation should have. The difference between it and corpse Luo devil lords, corpse Luo annihilation, was like the difference between heaven and earth. Undoubtedly, with a crippled body and crippled move, even if Gao Jin was stronger than Qiu Shan and Qi Feng, he could not resist the joint attack of the two. Rumble, rumble. At the next moment, the saber Qi and sword light soared into the sky like two dragons, attacking the tottering corpse Luo devil body. Bang, bang. The three extreme moves collided in the sky, and two visible air waves spread out from the center of the collision. The terrifying aura engulfed the entire Justice Virtue Great Hall. Rumble. Loud explosions resounded continuously. Justice Virtue Great Hall actually could not withstand the impact of the strong air waves, and the roof of the hall was actually lifted up. On the ground, dust filled the sky, and crushed rocks flew everywhere. When Gao Jin saw the saber Qi and sword light sweeping up from below, his body froze for a moment. Fear and despair spread from the bottom of his heart, and his eyes revealed unconcealable fear. Bang! Bang! In the next moment, the extreme move arrived in the blink of an eye, bombarding the crippled corpse Luo devil body. The originally tottering corpse Luo devil body finally could not withstand the strong impact and fell to the ground. Rumble! Rumble! Following that, the ground shook, and dust rose up into the sky from all directions. The instant the corpse Luo devil body fell to the ground, it shattered. Never in his wildest dreams could Gao Jin imagine how a few weak and inconspicuous ants could so easily trip over an elephant like him. Gao Jin originally thought that his corpse Luo devil body was invincible in front of Nie Tian and the others. He never thought that Nie Tian would actually be the first to break his corpse Luo devil body. Until he fell to the ground, Gao Jin still could not understand how a mere Wan Xiang level 1 martial artist could explode with that kind of power that made one despair. After a long time, the dust in the sky slowly settled down. In the ruins of Justice Virtue Great Hall, Gao Jin collapsed on the ground. His black robe was already badly damaged, and the thousands of holes on his body could no longer be concealed. Nie Tian slowly walked to Gao Jin's side. "Nie, God, what exactly are you?" Gao Jin used his last bit of strength to raise his head and take a look at Nie Tian. He spoke with a hoarse voice. "I'm sorry, I don't want to tell you." However, before Gao Jin could finish his last sentence, a sword Qi gushed out from Nie Tian's fingertip. Chapter 183. Nie Tian ended Gao Jin's life without hesitation, and the latter's body immediately emitted countless corpse-sifting worms. The corpse-sifting worms that lost their host quickly dissipated in the air. Gao Jin's body also slowly turned into a pool of blood. Qiu Shan and Qi Feng walked over and looked at the blood on the ground with a panicked expression. The two did not expect that they actually killed Gao Jin. However, they understood in their hearts that Nie Tian was the main force in killing Gao Jin. If Nie Tian did not severely injure Gao Jin's corpse-sifting demon body, it would be difficult to break the corpse-sifting demon body's defense with just Qiu Shan and Qi Feng's strength. The reign of terror in the Blue Cloud Empire finally came to an end with Gao Jin's death. Nie Tian let out a long breath and no longer cared about Gao Jin. He turned around and looked at Tang Yuyu, who had fainted on the ground not far away. Nie Tian walked over and finally heaved a sigh of relief when he sensed that Tang Yuyu's aura was still there. However, Yet Tian could not be sure how much consciousness and wisdom Tang Yuyu still retained. Looking at her appearance, she seemed to have been implanted with corpse-sifting Kursku not long ago. If she was lucky, she might retain some incomplete consciousness. If she was unlucky, she might not have any consciousness at all and lose all her memories. Tang Yuyu, losing your memory might not be a bad thing for you. Nie Tian looked at Tang Yuyu on the ground and sighed softly in his heart. No one knew what a female assassin had experienced. It was definitely a past that was unbearable to recall. Being able to completely forget such a past was also a kind of relief. Mr. Nie, do you know her? Qiu Shan saw that Nie Tian's gaze towards Tang Yuyu was obviously different, so he asked. Nie Tian nodded lightly and said, "She is a friend of mine. Bring her back to Jin residence first." "Yes." Qiu Shan bowed slightly and carried Tang Yuyu on his back. "Let's go. I will leave the rest to Qin Yetian to handle." Nie Tian turned around and prepared to leave. Qi Feng paused and glanced at the ruined Righteous Virtue Hall as if he wanted to say something. However, Nie Tian smiled and said, "Principal Qi, there's no need to search. Lan Yanhai is already dead. Even if we find him, his corpse will definitely not be complete." Qi Feng was looking for Lan Yanhai. However, Lan Yanhai was in the Righteous Virtue Great Hall. The Righteous Virtue Great Hall had already become a pile of ruins, and Lan Yanhai had already become a pile of unrecognizable rotten meat. The dignified Blue Cloud Emperor actually died in such a cowardly manner in the end, it really made people sigh. Nie Tian and the others immediately left. Nie Tian didn't want to patronize this palace anymore. As for the mess in the palace, Qin Yetian and Lan Bingxian would naturally take care of it. After he returned to the Jin estate, Nie Tian immediately checked Tang Yuyu's body, and he was much more at ease after he confirmed that the latter didn't have any corpse-sifting worms on him. Once the controller of the corpse Luo Kursku dies, the corpse Luo worms on Tang Yuyu's body will automatically die. The matter between the Blue Cloud Empire and the Bloodbat sect finally came to an end. Nie Tian took revenge for the Nie family, and his heart became clearer. 3 days later, in the Jin estate's small courtyard, Big Brother Nie Tian, Big Sister Yuyu, is awake. In the room, a crisp and clear voice of a child came out, seemingly very happy. Nie Tian walked out of another room and hurried over to check. In the room, on the warm and comfortable bed, a trace of morning sunlight shone in and just happened to shine on the face of the girl who had just opened her eyes. Tang Yuyu subconsciously raised her arm to block the slightly dazzling sunlight. After being unconscious for 3 days and 3 nights, Tang Yuyu felt that she had a long dream. In the dream, she fell into a quagmire, and the more she wanted to struggle, the deeper she sank. Just as she was about to lose all hope, a hand pulled her back. Then, she woke up from the long nightmare. When she opened her eyes again, the original cold and austere gaze completely disappeared, replaced by crystal-clear eyes, like a newborn baby, pure and bright, without a trace of filth. The moment Tang Yuyu opened her eyes, she saw people around her looking at her. "Miss Tang, you're awake," Qiu Ling said softly. "Big Sister Yuyu, you're finally awake. I thought you wouldn't be able to wake up," Nie Yuro said with a smile. A child's words carried no harm. "Tang Yuyu, you're finally awake." The door to the room was pushed open, and Nie Tian walked in. Tang Yuyu looked at the people in front of her, her beautiful eyes flashing curiously. Suddenly, she asked, "Who are you? Where's 13? Qiu Ling, and Nie Yuro giggled and said in unison, "We're your friends." Nie Tian said that after Tang Yuyu woke up, she might lose all her memories, so Qiu Ling, and Nie Yuro could pretend to be her friends. Actually, Qiu Ling, and Nie Yuro had rehearsed this scene many times. Tang Yuyu felt her head go dizzy. She actually forgot everything, even who she was, but she remembered a name, Tang 13. Seeing that Tang Yuyu had woken up, Nie Tian stepped forward and said, "Tang Yuyu, rest well. 13 will come to find you soon. I'm 13's friend." "We're all 13's friends," Qiu Ling, and Nie Yuro said in unison. "Thank you." Tang Yuyu was even more confused, but he still smiled. It was a very innocent smile. Nietian took a deep breath, then pushed open the door and left. He would let Tang Yuyu think about the rest. After a while, Tang 13 would bring people from the Tang family over, and he would hand her over to Tang 13. Then, Nietian would be able to complete his task. Tang 13, Tang Yuyu, what's the story between you two? Nietian murmured as he walked. When I have time, I must interrogate Tang 13. Thinking of Tang Yuyu and Tang 13, another beautiful face appeared in Nietian's mind. Rushi, I wonder how you're doing in the Mo family? Suddenly thinking of Mo Rushi, Nietian felt inexplicably distressed. Mo Rushi had been taken away by the Mo family and was now in Sumi's spiritual capital. Nietian didn't know how Mo Rushi was doing, but the faith in his heart had never changed. Nietian, no matter what you do, I believe in you. I will wait for you in Sumi's spiritual capital. You must come and find me. Mo Rushi's words suddenly echoed in his mind. Nietian couldn't help but murmur, Rushi, wait for me. I will definitely come and find you. If you don't leave me, I will live and die with you. Boss, who is Rushi? Where are you going to find her? Just as Nietian was immersed in his thoughts, a discordant voice suddenly rang in his ear. Jean de Bayo's figure appeared at an inopportune time. Nothing. Nietian smiled faintly and said vaguely, I know. Boss, you're flirting. Jean de Bayo chuckled, looking like a thief. Nietian was speechless. He thought to himself, damn, is this called flirting? Is this the first awakening of love? Nietian didn't want to mess around with Jean de Bayo. He asked, is Lan Bingchen here? Chapter 184. Lan Bingchen was now the emperor of Blue Cloud Empire. After the battle in the Imperial Palace ended, Nietian waited for Lan Bingchen in Jin residence. There was still an agreement between the two of them that had not been fulfilled. Lan Bingchen still owed Nietian a city, Heaven Luo City. Jin Residence's conference hall. Lan Bingchen stood in the center of the hall, with Qin Yetian standing beside him. Lan Bingchen's expression was a bit nervous, looking like he was in a panic. Seeing Lan Bingchen's expression, Jin Mingxin slightly frowned and had a bad premonition. After a short moment, Nietian and Jean de Bayo appeared. Mr. Nia. Lan Bingchen came out from afar to welcome Nietian. He was extremely respectful and did not dare to be negligent. Nietian walked into the hall and did not waste any time with Lan Bingchen and said directly, Lan Bingchen, I have already fulfilled my promise. Now it's time for you to fulfill your promise. Mr. Nia, this matter. Hearing Nietian's words, Lan Bingchen's expression changed slightly, and he became even more nervous. Lan Bingchen naturally knew that what Nietian was talking about was the matter of Heaven Luo City. What? Do you want to go back on your words? Nietian's expression sunk as he asked coldly. Although Lan Bingchen had become the emperor now, Nietian still did not put him in his eyes. Lan Bingchen only had Qin Yetian in his hands, which was far inferior to Gao Jin. Nietian was able to eliminate Gao Jin, so naturally, he would be able to eliminate Lan Bingchen. Mr. Nia, I don't dare to go back on my words. It's just that. Lan Bingchen's face turned pale, and he immediately became extremely nervous. Nietian brought Qiushan Qi Feng and the others and eliminated the Bloodbat sect that controlled the Imperial Palace in one night. This kind of method caused people to be terrified. Lan Bingchen knew that he was completely not Nietian's opponent, so he did not dare to go back on his words even if he had 100,000 gallbladders. If you have something to say, just say it. Nietian was too lazy to beat around the bush with Lan Bingchen and said impatiently. Lan Bingchen paused for a moment, then looked at Qin Yetian who was beside him. Mr. Nia, this is what happened. Qin Yetian understood. He stepped forward and cupped his hands, saying, Yesterday, the Wen Qin Empire sent an envoy. They wish to exchange cities with our Blue Cloud Empire. Switch cities? Nietian was slightly taken aback. Yes. Qin Yetian nodded his head and continued. Wen Qin Empire is willing to use the 12 borderline cities that were annexed by Blue Cloud Empire to exchange for another city. That is, Qin Yetian paused and observed Nye Tian's expression before saying, "This is the Heaven Luo city that Mr. Nye wants. Give me 12 cities in exchange for one city. This transaction isn't worth it at all. Could it be that shit entered Wind Qin Emperor's brain?" Nye Tian's brows furrowed slightly, and then he laughed. He looked at Lan Bingshun and asked, "You're moved?" "No, of course not." Lan Bingshun was startled for a moment and quickly denied. Exchanging one city for 12 cities was indeed a great bargain for Lan Bingshun. However, Heaven Luo City was the city that Nye Tian wanted. Even if someone was willing to exchange 20 cities for it, Lan Bingshun wouldn't agree. However, the troublesome thing was that the one who wanted to exchange for the city was Wind Qin Empire. Wind Qin Empire, second-rate empire among the 3,000 small worlds. Its national strength was more than 10 times stronger than Blue Cloud Empire. Blue Cloud Empire was only a third-rate empire, and it was even an existence that was subordinate to Wind Qin Empire. Originally, Wind Qin Empire could have directly occupied Heaven Luo City, but Wind Qin Emperor used 12 cities to exchange for it. This could already be considered as favoring Blue Cloud Empire. Large beads of sweat appeared on Lan Bingshun's face as he said, "Mr. Nye, if you want a city, you can casually choose from Blue Cloud Empire. Even if you want Blue Cloud City, I can also move the city. However, Heaven Luo City is what Wind Qin Empire wants. I really can't afford to offend, right?" Without waiting for Lan Bingshun to finish speaking, Nye Tian spoke for him. Furthermore, his expression sunk as he said, "I know that Wind Qin Empire is a second-rate empire and Blue Cloud Empire is only a third-rate empire. However, Lan Bingshun, if you feel that you can't afford to offend Wind Qin Empire, then do you feel that you can afford to offend me?" "Mr. Nye." When Lan Bingshun saw Nye Tian's stern face, he was scared to the point that he staggered and almost fell. Qin Yetian hurriedly supported Lan Bingshun, and his expression was also very unsightly. Before coming here, Qin Yetian had already discussed with Lan Bingshun that both Wind Qin Empire and Nye Tian were two parties that he couldn't afford to offend. If he had to choose between the two to offend, then Qin Yetian would choose Wind Qin Empire. In Qin Yetian's eyes, Nye Tian was an enemy that was even more terrifying than Wind Qin Empire. In actuality, Lan Bingshun also understood this point, but he was still hoping for a fluke. He thought that Nye Tian only wanted a city, any city would do, and it didn't necessarily have to be Heaven Luo City. Unfortunately, he thought wrongly. Nye Tian definitely wanted Heaven Luo City, because Doomsday Flame's main body was in Heaven Luo City. If not for this reason, Lan Bingshun wouldn't care about giving Heaven Luo City to Nye Tian for free. "Where are the Wind Qin Empire's people? Bring me to see them." Nye Tian also didn't want to make things too difficult for Lan Bingshun. She was just a kid. Scaring her was enough. Since the Wind Qin Empire's people wanted Heaven Luo City, Nye Tian had to ask why. When Lan Bingshun heard that Nye Tian wanted to see the Wind Qin Empire's people, his face instantly turned pale, and he hurriedly said, "Mr. Nye, there's no need to trouble you. I will make it clear to Wind Qin's people, Heaven Luo City still belongs to Mr. Nye." As Lan Bingshun spoke, he handed over a white jade token. White jade token, this was the City Lord's seal. With the City Lord's seal, Nye Tian was the City Lord of Heaven Luo City, recognized by the Blue Cloud Empire. Nye Tian didn't stand on ceremony. He directly took the seal and asked seriously, "Are you sure you won't let me see the Wind Qin Empire's people?" "There's no need to trouble, Mr. Nye." Lan Bingshun wiped his sweat. His face was trembling with fear. The reason why Lan Bingshun didn't let Nye Tian see the Wind Qin Empire's people, he naturally had his own considerations. With Nye Tian's personality, if he saw the Wind Qin Empire's people and both sides had a disagreement, a fight might break out. If the Wind Qin Empire's envoy accidentally died in the Blue Cloud Empire, Lan Bingshun wouldn't be able to take the blame even if he took off his pants. However, at this moment, a servant of the Jin mansion ran over in a panic. "Master, it's bad." The servant shouted as he ran into the hall, and because he was too nervous, he fell to the ground with a plop. "Fourth Happiness, what happened? Why are you panicking?" Ji Mingxin looked at the servant and his face sank. The servant, called Fourth Happiness, was gasping for breath. Laoi, he said, someone broke into the Jin mansion and also injured the mansion's bodyguards. What? Ji Mingxin couldn't believe his ears. Someone actually dared to barge into the Jin residence in the imperial city? Even Lan Bingchen had to report before she could enter the Jin residence. So where did this ignorant fool come from? He dared to barge into the Jin residence and even injure the guards. Where did this birdman come from? He actually dared to behave atrociously in the Jin residence. He's simply courting death. Jean de Bao's strength increased, so his temper also rose. He roared and was about to rush out. Be careful. At this time, Nietian suddenly felt a murderous aura, so he quickly turned around. Bang! An object suddenly fell from the sky, hitting the door frame of the hall and landing in front of the door. Chapter 185. Li Hu. Ji Mingxin took a step forward and saw the corpse on the ground clearly. It was the Jin residence's guard, Li Hu. Li Hu was not only a guard of the Jin residence, but also the captain of the guards. His strength was already at the 9th level of the Wanxiang realm. In the entire Blue Cloud Empire, he was considered a first-rate expert. Now, he was actually killed by someone, and his corpse was even thrown at the entrance of the Jin residence's hall. This was the most direct provocation. Who is it? Get out here! Ji Mingxin roared furiously. His thunderous voice turned into invisible sound waves, causing the tiles on the opposite roof to fly up. Humph. Immediately, a disdainful laughter sounded. A figure in gray appeared like a ghost. His speed was extremely fast, and with just a flash, he already arrived at the entrance of the hall. This was a very burly young man with a knife scar that stretched from his forehead to his chin. It added a hint of ruthlessness to this already fierce face, looking very frightening. Holy! Lan Bingchen and Qin Yetian saw the person's face and exclaimed in unison. This person was none other than one of the Feng Qin Empire's envoy. Holy! Your Majesty Lan Yin, Governor Qin is expected. You guys are here. The guards at the entrance are blind, not allowing our Highness to enter. I can only reluctantly teach him how to behave. Holy laughed sinisterly, as though he didn't care at all. Teach your mother. Jean de Bao was enraged and cursed. He suddenly attacked, punching out, courting death. Ho Li's figure moved, his killing intent surging. He slapped out a palm, blasting towards Jean de Bao. De Bao. Ji Mingxin was still shocked by Li Hu's death and did not react immediately. It was already too late for him to attack. Although Ho Li looked frightening, his strength was very fierce. He was actually a first-level giant spirit martial artist. Jean de Bao only had the strength of 5th-level origin spirit. How could he be Ho Li's match? And Ho Li's attacks were ruthless and decisive. He definitely would not show mercy. If this palm landed on Jean de Bao, even if he had the 4th-level golden thunder battle armor, he would definitely be heavily injured. Boom! At the critical moment, an enormous sword aura suddenly burst out in the air, colliding with Ho Li's palm. Bang! The sword chi collided with the palm, and Ho Li was actually unable to withstand the enormous sword chi. He took a few steps back and almost fell. On the other side, Nietian didn't react. He just looked at Ho Li coldly. The one who saved Jean de Bao just now was Nietian. However, he didn't expect that Ho Li's strength was actually above his expectations. Ho Li was even stronger than Qin Yetian, who was also at the 1st level of the giant spirit realm. Pushed back by Nietian's sword, Ho Li's face revealed a ruthless expression as he roared in a deep voice, "Brat, who are you?" Ho Li had never imagined that a first-tier all-creations martial artist would be able to repel him with one strike. This was simply unheard of. Someone you can't afford to offend, Nie Tianling said coldly. His eyes swept over Li Hu's corpse, and his whole body revealed undisguised killing intent. I can't afford to offend you. Ho Li's face darkened. Then, as if he had heard a joke, he suddenly laughed and said, "Stinking brat, do you know who I am?" Nie Tian smiled faintly. The corners of his mouth suddenly curled up coldly as he said, "Sorry, I'm not interested in a dead man." Dead man? Holy was slightly stunned. He didn't quite understand what Nietian meant. Holy publicly killed people in the Jin residence. No matter who he was, he had to pay with his life today. Clap, clap, clap. At this time, 3 crisp claps rang out. Then, 3 figures appeared not far away in the hall. The figure walking in the front was especially special. It was him who was clapping. He was special because this person looked very strange. He looked around 20 years old, but he was very short, a head shorter than the average person. His eyes were deeply sunken, making his gaze look very deep. His chin was long and protruding, making him look a little like an incomplete evolution. The most surprising thing was that this person actually had 4 arms. It was really 4 arms. Moreover, they looked very strong, which was disproportionate to his short body. If one had to find a good point from this person, it would be the fan in his hand. It was very exquisite and looked very good. Your Highness, when Holy saw the person, he immediately became respectful and called out in a low voice. This person was none other than the leader of the Feng Qin Empire's envoy, Feng Wuk. At the same time, he was also the 3rd prince of the Feng Qin Empire. This time, Feng Wuk was in charge of the exchange of cities between the Feng Qin Empire and the Lan Yin Empire. This young master, your words are very interesting. This king didn't hear it clearly. Can you repeat it again? Feng Wuk waved the fan in his hand and said indifferently. However, his tone contained a suffocating coldness. Lan Bingxian and Qin Yetian, who were standing at the side, were scared silly. When they heard Feng Wuk's words, they suddenly reacted. Mr. Nya, this is His Highness Feng Wuk of the Wen Qin Empire. He is the 3rd prince of the Wen Qin Empire. This time, the Wen Qin Empire. Lan Bingxian sensed that Nietian's expression was not right and hurriedly went up and said. However, before he could finish, he was interrupted by Nietian. Nietian's gaze swept across the people in front of him and finally landed on Feng Wuk. He said in a cold voice, I said that I am not interested in dead people. I am also not interested in you. Oh. Feng Wuk's expression turned cold. He suddenly laughed and said, So, in your eyes, Holy is a dead man? His laughter was cold, but everyone could hear the disdain in it. Feng Wuk thought that Nietian was just a noble young master of the Lan Yin Empire. It was just that his family had some power. He was usually a little arrogant and couldn't accept the fact that his bodyguard was killed. In the Lan Yin Empire, not to mention a noble young master wouldn't dare to touch the people of the Feng Qin Empire. Even the emperor of the Lan Yin Empire wouldn't dare to touch a single hair of the people of the Feng Qin Empire. The Lan Yin Empire was just a 3rd-rate country. If they made the prince of the Feng Qin Empire unhappy, he could just destroy them. Nietian looked at Feng Wuk. His eyes were filled with killing intent. He said, In my eyes, he is a dead man. If you want to save him, you will have to die too. Feng Wuk didn't put Nietian in his eyes. Nietian also didn't put him in his eyes. There was no need to talk about Feng Wuk being a prince of a 2nd-rate empire. Nietian didn't even look at Mou, the young master of one of the 4 major clans in the small Sumi world, and one of the 3 monstrous geniuses. As long as Feng Wuk dared to interfere, Nietian wouldn't hesitate to kill him. Nietian glanced at the people behind Feng Wuk and couldn't help but frown. Feng Wuk was at the 1st level of the giant spirit realm. Of the 2 people behind him, one was a burly man in his prime, and the other was a skinny old man. The burly man was still all right. He was only at the 1st level of the giant spirit realm and didn't attract Nietian's attention. Chapter 186. Of the 4 people from the Feng Qin Empire, 3 were at the 1st level of the giant spirit realm, and 1 was at the 3rd level of the giant spirit realm. This kind of strength was much stronger than the Blue Cloud Empire. No wonder Lan Bingxian was so afraid of the Feng Qin Empire. But Lan Bingxian was afraid. It did not mean that Nietian was afraid. Since the Feng Qin Empire killed the guards of the Jin estate, they must pay with their lives. Lan Bingxian was already drenched in cold sweat. He did not expect that the Feng Qin Empire would follow them to the Jin estate, nor did he expect them to kill the guards of the Jin estate. With Nietian's style of doing things, this matter would definitely not end peacefully. Lan Bingxian wanted to step forward and say something, but he was stopped by Qin Yetian. Qin Yetian shook his head slightly, indicating that he should not interfere. This matter was already out of control. If Lan Bingchun interfered, it would only make things worse. Feng Wuk looked at Nie Tian with a strange expression, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. He could not help but laugh out loud. Qin Yetian could not help but shake his head. He was starting to worry for Feng Wuk. Qin Yetian remembered that Lan Binji had also laughed at Nie Tian like this not too long ago. And Lan Binji's final outcome was that not even his bones were left. Everyone's first reaction when they saw Nie Tian was disdain. But those who were disdainful were eventually trampled to death by Nie Tian like ants. Feng Wuk did not know what kind of person Nie Tian was, and this ignorance would completely destroy him. Laugh. Laugh your mother's egg. Before Nie Tian could flare up, Jean de Bayo could not hold it in any longer. He cursed and was about to attack again. The guard who was killed, Li Hu, had been in the Jean estate for many years, and Jean de Bayo had deep feelings for him. Now that he was brutally murdered, how could he tolerate it? De Bayo stepped down first. Nie Tian already knew that Jean de Bayo couldn't hold back and stop him. Feng Wuk glanced at Nie Tian coldly. He could no longer contain his cold, killing intent. He suddenly looked at Lan Bingchen and said sinisterly, "Your Majesty Lan Yun, you saw it. It was the people here who were disrespectful to this king. Today, this king will punish them with a small punishment. I hope you don't mind." Even at this moment, Feng Wuk still believed that Lan Bingchen was the true leader here. However, what he didn't know was that Lan Bingchen's words meant nothing in Nie Tian's eyes. Third prince this. Lan Bingchen still wanted to explain, but she was stopped by Qin Yetian again. Qin Yetian was, after all, experienced and ruthless. He was much smarter than Lan Bingchen. At this time, no matter what he said, it was useless. If Feng Wuk really attacked Nie Tian and the others, Qin Yetian would definitely step in to stop him. Ho Jian. Feng Wuk was not interested in listening to Lan Bingchen's nonsense. This old servant is here. The dark and thin old man smiled coldly and bowed in response. Kill them all. Don't leave a single one alive. Feng Wuk said coldly. The muscles on his face were all distorted. Yes, Ho Jian replied and took a step forward. Out of everyone here, other than Qin Yetian and Jin Mingxin, who were at the first level of the giant spirit realm, the others are not worth mentioning. Ho Jian was confident that he could kill everyone here within a minute. With that thought in mind, Ho Jian no longer hesitated. The essence energy in his body surged, and a terrifying aura spread out. Qin Yetian hurriedly stood behind Lan Bingchen to protect her. Just this aura alone was hard for the latter to resist. Little bastard, don't blame this old man for being ruthless. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for being blind and offending someone you shouldn't have offended. Ho Jian smiled coldly. A spirit appeared behind him, and it was actually a slit-toothed jackal. This was the first time Ho Jian made a move, and he went all out. It was clear that he wanted to kill Nie Tian in a single move. Oh, the slit-toothed jackal let out an ear-piercing howl. It slapped out with its front paw, and a ferocious airwave condensed into a steel claw that attacked towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian did not panic. He did not even move. Boss! Seeing that Nie Tian did not move, Jean de Bayo shouted, thinking that Nie Tian was scared silly. Who dares to touch my family's mister? Right at the moment of imminent peril, a voice suddenly sounded out. Immediately, a streak of copious saber chi whizzed over. The saber chi was sharp and cold, akin to an arrow leaving the bow. When the steel claw was still several meters away from Nie Tian, it already arrived despite being launched later. Bang! An explosive sound rang out. The saber chi pervaded out, and the steel claw broke in response. Ho Jian retreated several steps in succession. His arm actually became dripping with fresh blood. The next instant, a figure blocked in front of Nie Tian. It was none other than Qiushan, who rushed over in a hurry. Another 3 days passed. Qiushan's strength actually rose again, and he was already at the 4th level of the giant spirit realm. Just with one move, Qiushan easily suppressed Ho Jian. It was clear that his strength was far above this person's. "Mister, are you all right?" Qiushan looked at Nie Tian and asked anxiously. He had just returned from Tyrant Cloud Academy when he heard the commotion in the hall. He immediately rushed over and saved Nie Tian. Of course, Nie Tian had long since Qiushan's return. Otherwise, he would not have stood still in the same place. "I'm fine." Nie Tian nodded calmly, but in his heart, he heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Qiushan had returned in time. Otherwise, things would have been difficult to handle. Right now, Nie Tian did not have any star souls. If they were to really fight, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. He only had the strength of the first level of the Wanxiang Adept physique. Just now, he was able to defeat Ho Li with a single sword strike. On one hand, Ho Li was caught unprepared and did not use his giant spirit true body. On the other hand, Nie Tian's sword chi was indeed sharp. However, Ho Jian was different. His strength was at the third level of the giant spirit realm. The current Nie Tian could not handle him, unless Nie Tian had star souls or used the 3 seals of the God of War. Now that Qiushan had returned, things were much easier to handle. "Who are you?" Ho Jian was injured by Qiushan's blade. His eyes were filled with extreme fear as he asked in horror. He had never imagined that a mere first level of the Wanxiang Adept physique like Nie Tian would have such a strong person by his side. Moreover, from Qiushan's attitude towards Nie Tian, it was obvious that he was a servant or guard. At this moment, Feng Wuk was also stunned. He began to doubt Nie Tian's identity. He immediately sensed that Nie Tian's identity was not simple. He was definitely not as simple as a noble young master. Even the commander of the Imperial Guards was only at the first level of the giant spirit realm. For a noble young master's guard to be at the 4th level of the giant spirit realm, it was clearly inexplicable. "Father, are you all right?" Ho Li, who was at the side, hurried forward and asked when he saw Ho Jian's hand. Ho Jian and Ho Li were actually a pair of father and son. Qiushan ignored Ho Jian's words. Instead, he swept his cold gaze over the few people before him and asked, "Mr. Nie, how should we deal with these people?" "Kill them. Don't leave a single one alive," Nie Tianling said coldly. There was no hesitation in his eyes. "Kill them. Don't leave a single one alive." Hearing Nie Tian's words, Feng Wuk felt as though he had been struck by lightning. He couldn't help but twitch. This was the order he had just given to Ho Jian. Now that these words came out of Nie Tian's mouth, it didn't sound like a sentence. It was more like a resounding slap to Feng Wuk's face. Chapter 187. Of course, Nie Tian wasn't joking. He was serious. Even if Feng Wuk was a prince of the Fengqin Empire, he allowed his subordinates to kill people in the Jin estate for no reason and even wanted to kill everyone in the Jin estate. Just this alone was enough for him to die 100 times over. Moreover, Nie Tian didn't place the tiny Fengqin Empire in his eyes. Not to mention a little prince like Feng Wuk. Even if he was the emperor of the Fengqin Empire, he would still kill him. "Yes," Qiushan replied. His stern gaze swept over Feng Wuk and the others as he said in a cold tone, "No matter who you are, you must die for offending my family's mister." Being locked onto by Qiushan's stern gaze, Feng Wuk's mind immediately flashed with a single word: run. Ho Jian and his son, as well as another person beside him, had the same thought. They looked at Qiushan with unconcealable fear in their eyes. This was the prestige of the strong, causing the weak to tremble in fear. Ashen Moon Desert Saber. Qiushan's figure moved. His Ashen Moon Desert Saber let out a powerful saber cry as a huge saber wave surged out. "Protect His Highness." Ho Jian was the first to react. He knew he wasn't Qiushan's match, but he still desperately rushed forward. His cracked teeth Jackal's primordial spirit revealed its giant spirit true body and jumped out, forcefully resisting Qiushan's Ashen Moon Desert Saber. Bang! The powerful collision and the shockwaves caused the surrounding space to slightly tremble as mist appeared in the air. In a clash of strength against strength, the strong and the weak were immediately separated. Ho Jian screamed and flew backwards. When he landed on the ground, he drew a bloody trail on the ground. "Father, Holy screamed in pain and immediately rushed over. Ho Jian was heavily injured by Qiu Shan, but it won a moment for Feng Wuck. PFFF. Feng Wuck was extremely cunning. His figure nimbly leaped forward and waved the folding fan in his hand. Instantly, a fine rain of silver needles appeared in the air. Poison. Qiu Shan smelled the pungent smell in the air and immediately reacted. Feng Wuck's silver needles were extremely poisonous. He immediately slashed out with saber energy, blocking the silver needles in the air. When he looked up again, Feng Wuck's figure had already disappeared, but his subordinates weren't so lucky. Kill! The middle-aged man wasn't stupid. He immediately attacked Nie Tian. He punched out, and the imposing aura of a first-level giant spirit realm martial artist appeared. You're courting death. Unfortunately, Qin Yetian and Jin Mingxin, who were beside Nie Tian, had long since sensed it and attacked at the same time. Binding of heaven and earth. Rushing thunder hands. Jin Mingxin and Qin Yetian roared simultaneously. The huge coin of the heaven and earth trapped the man, and then a huge hand made of purple lightning slammed down. The man didn't even have time to scream before he died on the spot. Qiu Shan also did not hesitate and directly slashed at Ho Li, who was still grieving. Ho Li wanted to resist, but unfortunately, Qiu Shan's strength was far beyond what he could handle. He had just opened his mouth, but before he could make a sound, his head had already fallen to the ground. Lier. Ho Jian had just taken a blow from Qiu Shan, but he did not die. Suddenly seeing his son killed, he let out a miserable howl and immediately crawled up from the ground, erupting with the last of his strength. Extreme, teeth-splitting kill. Ho Jian roared, and the giant spirit true body of the slit-toothed jackal appeared behind him. He rushed over without a care, trying to take Qiu Shan down with him. Desert Blade has no edge. Blade Mark has no path. How could Qiu Shan let him do as he wished? With a roar, the shocking blade light appeared again and slashed down with earth-shattering power. Bang! With a loud explosion, the slit-toothed jackal's giant spirit true body was broken, and a frightening trench several meters deep appeared on the ground. Looking at Ho Jian again, there was not even a corpse left. The power of Qiu Shan's blade directly killed the desperate Ho Jian on the spot. Jin Mingxin and Qin Yetian watched from the side, shocked to the core. If it were them, they definitely wouldn't be able to block Qiu Shan's blade. Lan Bingchen was almost scared out of his wits as he stared blankly at Qiu Shan. He really couldn't understand when Qiu Shan had become so terrifying. Lan Bingchen had seen Qiu Shan a few times in the past. At that time, the latter was still a trash, first-level all-manifestation martial artist. Until one day, when he came out of seclusion, he directly became a third-level giant spirit martial artist. What on earth happened in between, Lan Bingchen couldn't understand, even if his brain exploded. The only explanation was Nie Tian. It was Nie Tian who made Qiu Shan become so monstrous. Otherwise, Qiu Shan wouldn't be so obedient to Nie Tian. Nie Tian couldn't help but frown at this time and said, Qiu Shan, you condensed the blade heart? Qiu Shan bowed and nodded. Nie Tian nodded in satisfaction. No wonder Qiu Shan's strength suddenly became so monstrous, almost crushing Ho Jian. No matter what, Ho Jian was still a third-level giant spirit martial artist. Although he was slightly weaker than Qiu Shan, it wasn't to the extent that he was seriously injured in one move and turned into ashes in the second. Qiu Shan condensed the blade heart, and his strength practically took a qualitative leap. The blade heart to the saber was like the sword heart to the sword. A saber wielder with a blade heart and a saber wielder without a blade heart were worlds apart. Nie Tian estimated that although Qiu Shan currently only had the strength of a fourth-level giant spirit, his true combat strength should be even more terrifying than an ordinary fifth-level giant spirit martial artist, even comparable to a sixth-level giant spirit martial artist. When a martial artist reached the giant spirit realm, the gap between each minor realm was an enormous chasm. To be able to jump 2 levels to battle was already considered very heaven-defying. The current Qiu Shan was not much different from Gao Jing a few days ago. Tian could tell that the saber art that Qiushan used seemed to be very unusual, but seemed to be somewhat incomplete. It always gave him a feeling of not being able to exert strength at the crucial moment. But Tian didn't say it directly. He would ask Qiushan when the time was right in the future. Mr. Qiushan is incompetent. One escaped. Mr. Please punish me. Qiushan suddenly walked to Tian's side and said with a bow. Tian smiled faintly and said, Just a little loach. So what if it ran? It's no big deal. Little loach? Lan Bingshun sucked in a breath of cold air. Feng Wuk was a little loach in Tian's eyes, but in Lan Bingshun's eyes, he was a giant. But when Lan Bingshun saw how respectful Qiushan was to Tian, his expression immediately stiffened. He really couldn't figure out what kind of person Tian was to deserve such reverence from Qiushan. Following that, Jin Mingxin ordered people to carry Li Hu's corpse away and bury it properly. As for Ho Li and the others' corpses, they were directly thrown into the unmarked graveyard. When everyone returned to the conference hall, the atmosphere became deathly stifling. Tian let Qiushan kill the Wen Qin Empire's people, and Qin Yetian also made a move. If Feng Wuk returned to the Wen Qin Empire, the two empires would most likely face a war. Lan Bingshun, don't worry about Feng Wuk's matter. I will take responsibility for my own actions. I promise I won't implicate the Blue Cloud Empire. Before Lan Bingshun could speak, Tian directly said straightforwardly. Chapter 188. Lan Bingshun's words could be considered sensible. Since the situation was irreversible, he could only fall on Tian's side. Lan Bingshun suddenly asked, Mr. Nye, when do you plan to go to Heaven Luo City? Tian didn't hide anything and directly said, I will leave very soon, latest by tomorrow. Lan Bingshun pondered for a moment and said, Heaven Luo City is 3,000 miles away from the Imperial City. Mr. Nye will need at least a few days to arrive. The current Heaven Luo City Lord is my uncle Lan Yunjiang. After I return to the Imperial Palace, I will immediately send a letter to him to prepare to leave immediately and vacate the City Lord's mansion for Mr. Nye. Tian nodded, expressing his satisfaction. Lan Bingshun was quite thoughtful. At this moment, Lan Bingshun still wanted to say something, but he hesitated. How could Tian not guess what he was thinking? He faintly smiled. Don't worry. Heaven Luo City is located at the border between the Wen Qin Empire and the Blue Cloud Empire. If the Wen Qin Empire really wants to start a war with the Blue Cloud Empire, then Heaven Luo City will bear the brunt. I can guarantee you that with me here, the Wen Qin Empire's army won't be able to take half a step into Heaven Luo City, let alone threaten the Blue Cloud Empire. You can be at ease as your emperor. Let me be your strongest barrier. Many thanks, Mr. Nye. Lan Bingshun was extremely excited and immediately bowed. Qin Yetian poked Lan Bingshun at this moment, and the latter immediately reacted and wanted to apologize. However, Tian waved his hand, indicating that it was no big deal. Tian wasn't willing to listen to these kind of polite words. Heaven Luo City was what he wanted anyway, and if it could guarantee the Blue Cloud Empire's safety, why not? Mr. Nye, I will take my leave now. Since Tian had confirmed it, Lan Bingshun didn't stay any longer and said, I will definitely send you off tomorrow. No need. Tian faintly smiled and indicated that Lan Bingshun could leave. Lan Bingshun and Qin Yetian immediately left. Today's matter was too big, and they needed to go back and digest it. After the two of them left, only Jin Mingxin, Nye Tian, and the others were left in the hall. Mr. Nye, the guarantee you gave Lan Bingshun just now couldn't be true, right? Jin Mingxin bluntly asked. Of course it's true. Tian smiled faintly. Jin Mingxin furrowed his brows and said, Mr. Nye, you should know that Heaven Luo City is not only the border between the Wen Qin Empire and the Blue Cloud Empire, but it's also adjacent to the Water Crow Empire and the Sun Chu Empire. These three empires are second-rate empires, and the Blue Cloud Empire can't afford to offend them. Therefore, Heaven Luo City is truly a dangerous place. Waving his hand, Niet Tian interrupted Jin Mingxin's words and confidently said, President Jin, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Although the other three empires are strong, as long as I am in Heaven Luo City, I will not allow others to covet it. If anyone dares to lay their hands on Heaven Luo City, I will make them pay a painful price. Looking at Niet Tian's calm face, Jin Mingxin immediately swallowed back the words he had prepared in his mind. Jin Mingxin had read countless people, and as long as he took a glance at them, he would basically be able to guess most of them. However, even though he had known Niet Tian for so long, he still felt that the latter was a mystery. The more he tried to see through him, the more he couldn't. If anyone else said that they could protect Heaven Luo City by themselves, Jin Mingxin definitely wouldn't believe it. However, coming from Niet Tian's mouth, he was 70 to 80% convinced. Niet Tian was a person who could create miracles. Thinking about it carefully, just 2 months ago, who would have thought that a youth from a third-rate city would be able to stand at the peak of the Blue Cloud Empire? Even the emperor had to be respectful to him like a servant. Such an unimaginable thing had happened just like that, and the protagonist was standing right in front of him. As Jin Mingxin thought of this, he actually believed Niet Tian's words by a lot. If Niet Tian said he could protect Heaven Luo City, then he definitely could. President Jin, do you know of a place called Danwu City? Niet Tian suddenly asked. Danwu City was the city that Gu Yi mentioned to Niet Tian. It was also the place where the Feng Qin, Shui Wu, and Richu empires held the Danwu Provincial Assembly. Jin Mingxin was stunned for a moment, then said, Danwu City is just beside Heaven Luo City, separated by a river. However, this city doesn't belong to the three empires, but the Alchemist Guild's private city. Alchemist Guild City? Niet Tian was slightly stunned. Yes. Jin Mingxin nodded and explained, the Alchemist Guild is an ancient and huge organization. It is said that it has existed since the medieval era. In the 3,000 small worlds, almost every country has an Alchemist Guild branch, and the Alchemist Guild also has its own private city in various places. It is said that Danwu City is not only a private city of the Alchemist Guild, but there's also a red-robed elder of the 3,000 small worlds Alchemist Guild headquarters overseeing it. Therefore, even though Danwu City is located at the border of the three empires, no matter how the three empires fight, the flames of war never dare to burn into Danwu City. So that's how it is. The corner of Niet Tian's mouth curled up slightly, but he thought of something in his heart. He vaguely remembered that on the black iron token that Gu Yi gave him, there seemed to be 2 words engraved on the back. Red-robed. This old fella, could he be the red-robed elder of the Alchemist Guild headquarters overseeing Danwu City? Niet Tian guessed in his heart. Although Niet Tian was an alchemist, he didn't know the rules of the 3,000 small worlds Alchemist Guild headquarters, nor did he know what this red-robed elder represented. President Jin, what does the red-robed elder mean? Niet Tian felt a little strange in his heart, and couldn't help but ask. Jin Mingxin was stunned for a moment, and looked at Niet Tian with a strange expression. That expression was clearly saying, You're an alchemist. How can you not know what the red-robed elder means? Although he had doubts in his heart, Jin Mingxin still explained, the elders of the 3,000 small worlds Alchemist Guild headquarters are divided into 4 grades. White-robed elder, red-robed elder, yellow-robed elder, and blue-robed elder. Among them, only the headquarters president can wear white robes and is called white-robed elder. Red-robed elder is second only to the president, and it is said that there are only 7 red-robed elders in the Alchemist Guild headquarters. There are more yellow-robed and blue-robed elders, and basically, the branch presidents of first-rate empires or second-rate empires can become blue-robed or yellow-robed. Niet Tian couldn't help but curl his lips when he heard this, and thought in his heart, the alchemists of the 3,000 small worlds are nothing much, but this division of grades is rather detailed. But hearing Jin Mingxin say this, it seemed that red-robed elders were very awesome and gave off an awesome feeling. Mr. Nya, why did you suddenly mention Danwu City? Could it be that you're going to Heaven Luo City to participate in the Danwu City's Alchemy Grand Meet? Jin Mingxin suddenly thought of the alchemy grand meet and couldn't help but ask. Yet Tian smiled faintly and said, "That's not it. I'm not interested in whatever alchemy grand meet. It's just that a friend asked me to look for him in Danwu City when I have time, so I'm just asking." What Nye Tian said wasn't false. It was indeed Gu Yi who asked him to go to Danwu City to take a look. Chapter 189. In the dense forest on the outskirts of Blue Cloud City. Phew, phew, phew. A figure running wildly finally stopped, panting heavily as he held onto a large tree. Feng Wu's small face was pale, and he was still in a state of shock. He never thought that this diplomatic mission to the Blue Cloud Empire would end like this. Not only did the plan to exchange cities fail, but he even almost lost his life. Originally, Feng Wu thought that everything would go smoothly on this trip to the Blue Cloud Empire. He could even threaten the Blue Cloud Emperor at the same time. Who would have thought that a Nye Tian would appear out of nowhere and actually make him suffer a crushing defeat? Actually, this was all Feng Wu's own fault. He provoked the Jin residents first. Nye Tian was just giving him a taste of his own medicine. This was called courting death and not being able to live. Surnamed Nye Brat, when this prince returns to the Feng Qin Empire, I'll definitely make you and the Blue Cloud Empire pay the price in blood. Feng Wu revealed a fierce expression as he gnashed his teeth. After resting for a moment, he no longer dared to stay and started running wildly. The Blue Cloud Empire was too dangerous. He did not want to stay a moment longer. At the same time, in the Jin residence's courtyard, Nye Tian and Qiu Shan stood opposite each other. "Have you resolved your matter?" Nye Tian looked at Qiu Shan and asked with a faint smile. Qiu Shan was not in the Jin residence previously because he went to Tyrant Cloud Academy to resolve an old matter. Fan Jinwu was the old matter that Qiu Shan wanted to resolve. Back then, Qiu Shan's essence meridians were destroyed because of Fan Jinwu. Now that his essence meridians had recovered and his strength had skyrocketed, he naturally would not let Fan Jinwu off. Nye Tian knew that Qiu Shan had already condensed a saber heart, so he was very confident in him. Even if Qi Feng did not intervene, Fan Jinwu was absolutely not Qiu Shan's match. Given Qiu Shan's performance today, Fan Jinwu could not even receive one saber strike from him. Yes, Qiu Shan nodded slightly, but a trace of helplessness flashed on his face. Nye Tian keenly caught the change in Qiu Shan's expression and frowned slightly. "Qiu Shan, I don't want you to hide anything from me. Say it." The helplessness on Qiu Shan's face clearly revealed that he still had something to say to Nye Tian. In fact, Nye Tian could roughly guess what was going on. The first time Xiao Chun met Fan Jinji, he had mentioned that Fan Jinwu and Fan Jinji were just pawns in the framing of Qiu Shan. There was a mastermind behind the scenes. Fan Jinji had even told Qiu Shan to be an honest piece of trash, because the person behind them was not someone Qiu Shan could afford to offend. Nye Tian reckoned that Qiu Shan must have found out about the mastermind behind the scenes from Fan Jinwu. However, just as Fan Jinji said, the mastermind behind the scenes was very strong, far from what the current Qiu Shan could provoke. Qiu Shan hesitated for a moment, but seeing the determination in Nye Tian's eyes, he still said, "Sir, have you heard of the deification sect? The transformation sect?" Nye Tian was slightly stunned and immediately shook his head. Nye Tian had never heard of the God transformation sect, but judging from Qiu Shan's expression, it should be a relatively large organization. The 3,000 small worlds are divided into 4 major regions. Right now, we are in one of the 4 regions, the South Mountain region. Qiu Shan explained. The South Mountain region has 2 sects that are even more powerful than first-rate empires. They are called the South Transformation Sect and the North Qinquan Palace, respectively referring to the Transformation Sect and the Qinquan Palace. At this point, Qiu Shan paused. Nye Tian had already guessed most of it and said, "The mastermind behind the scenes who framed you back then was from the Transformation Sect, right?" Qiu Shan nodded solemnly and said, "I have already killed Fan Jinwu." Before he died, he said a name. Qiu Shan suddenly closed his eyes with a pained expression and a hint of despair. "What name?" Seeing Qiu Shan's expression, Yet Tian's heart couldn't help but sink. Dong Fangyu. Qiu Shan said the name word by word with difficulty, and the despair on his face became even more serious. Who is this person? Nye Tian was slightly stunned and immediately became a little curious. This person was clearly the mastermind behind the scenes who framed Qiu Shan back then. But since he could make Qiu Shan so desperate, his identity must be extraordinary. Transformation Sect Master. After a long time, Qiu Shan finally revealed Dong Fangyu's identity. This person is your enemy, right? The corner of Nye Tian's mouth curled up. He patted Qiu Shan's shoulder and said, "Just a mere sect master. I can promise you that within 3 years, I will definitely help you get revenge." Mr. Nye. Qiu Shan's expression was excited, but he said, "Mr. Nye might not know, but the Transformation Sect can be said to be the top force in the South Mountain region. Even in the 3,000 small worlds, it is definitely a first-class force. As a Transformation Sect Master, Dong Fangyu's strength must be unfathomable. Not to mention that I am only at the Giant Spirit Realm. Even if I am at the True Energy Realm or the Spiritual Realm, I still have no hope of getting revenge in this lifetime, let alone within 3 years. I know that Mr. is comforting me. Being able to meet Mr. in this life is already a blessing from the heavens. As for revenge, no matter. No." Without waiting for Qiu Shan to finish, Nye Tian directly interrupted him and said sternly, "I am not comforting you. What I said is the truth. What I said just now is my promise to you. Within 3 years, the Transformation Sect will definitely be removed from the 3,000 small worlds." Nye Tian's face was solemn, but Qiu Shan was shocked. He was even petrified for a few seconds before he came back to his senses. After a while, Qiu Shan finally calmed down a bit and finally said, "Mr. Qiu Shan has a question in my heart. I don't know if I should ask." "Ask away." Nye Tian faintly smiled. Qiu Shan took a deep breath and asked, "Mr., are you a disciple of the 4 big families?" What Nye Tian said just now and his expression just now showed that he did not put the Transformation Sect in his eyes at all. In the 3,000 small worlds, apart from the 4 big families, who would dare to do this? Therefore, Qiu Shan guessed that Nye Tian was very likely a disciple of the 4 big families, and his identity was not ordinary. "I'm not a disciple of the 4 big families." However, Nye Tian shook his head slightly and calmly said with a smile, "I can't tell you what my identity is now. When the time is right, you will naturally know who I am. As for now, you only need to know that I have never put the 4 big families in my eyes. The deity transformation sect that you speak of is even more insignificant." Nye Tian did not lie, nor did he exaggerate. He really did not put the 4 big families in his eyes because the head of the Tang family, the head of the 4 big families, was only his youngest disciple. As for the Transformation Sect, it was even more of a trash force not worth mentioning. As long as Nye Tian was given a bit of time, he could casually step on it. "Mr." Hearing what Nye Tian said, Qiu Shan's heart was in turmoil and his face was full of shock. If Nye Tian's words were heard by others, everyone would think that he was a madman or a fool who was talking nonsense. If it was anyone else who said this, Qiu Shan would definitely think that that person was farting. However, Nye Tian was different. Qiu Shan believed in Nye Tian. Chapter 190. The next morning, when the fiery red canopy of the eastern sky was slowly pushed over, a luxurious carriage with 2 dragon horses was already parked outside Blue Cloud City. "Wow, what a beautiful carriage!" Nye Yuro's crisp voice sounded. She was holding Nye Tian with one hand and holding Xiao Guai with the other. She looked very excited. Nye Tian smiled faintly and said, "Ling, Tang Yu, take Yuro to the carriage first. I have a few words to say to President Jin." Xiu Ling, and Tang Yu nodded and got into the carriage with Nye Yuro. This time, Nye Tian was in a Heaven Luo city with Nye Yuro, Xiu Ling and Tang Yu, Jin Debao, and Zhang Yifeng. Zhang Yifeng was now Nye Tian's personal disciple, so he naturally had to follow his teacher. Jin Debao's 3,000 demon god seal was only temporarily suppressed, so he had to follow Nye Tian. Jean Mingxin thought that Jean de Bao following beside Nie Tian was absolutely beneficial to the latter, so of course he agreed. As for Chi Feng, he had to stay at Tyrant Cloud Academy. Rui Qinyu had left the academy, and Fan Jinwu had been killed by Qiu Shan. Now, Tyrant Cloud Academy depended on Chi Feng. Nie Tian had originally planned to wait for Tang 13 to return before going to Heaven Luo City, but after what happened with Feng Wuck yesterday, he decided to go there now. Last night, Nie Tian had made a trip to Tyrant Cloud Academy, but he had not received any news about Rainy Thousand Leaf. It was as if she had vanished into thin air, and there was no trace of her at all. Mr. Nya, the journey to Heaven Luo City will be dangerous. Are you sure you don't need guards? Jin Mingxin asked. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, with Qiu Shan around, everything will be fine. Qiu Shan was now at the 4th tier of the giant spirit realm and had cultivated Saber Heart. Ordinary warriors were no match for him. His strength alone was equivalent to 100 guards of the Jin residence. Jin Mingxin had seen Qiu Shan's strength with his own eyes, so he didn't say anything more. Big brother Qiu Shan, Mr. Nya, I really want to go to Heaven Luo City with you, but I can't leave Tyrant Cloud Academy. Chi Feng nodded, unable to hide the regret in his words. Principal Chi, it's good that you're staying in Tyrant Cloud Academy. If there's any news about Principal Yu, please inform me. She still owes me 10 days of cultivation, Nie Tian said with a smile. All right, Chi Feng agreed. Nie Tian then said to Jin Mingxin, President Jin, after I leave, if Tang 13 comes to find me, tell him that Tang Yuyu is fine and has gone to Heaven Luo City with me. Tell him to find me there. No problem. Jin Mingxin nodded with a smile. Of course, he knew Tang 13. When Tang 13 first came to the Jin mansion, the two of them fought. Nie Tian thought for a moment. There was nothing else, so he didn't delay any further. Qiu Shan and Nie Tian boarded the carriage and became the coachman. Jin de Bao and Zhang Yifeng each rode a dragon horse. The carriage moved forward slowly. Jin Mingxin and Chi Feng stood and watched until the carriage completely disappeared. Only then did they return to Blue Cloud City. Heaven Luo City was a border city of the Blue Cloud Empire. It was 3,000 miles away from Blue Cloud City. Nie Tian and the others rode in the dragon horse carriage. Although the dragon horse was only a rank 1 spirit beast, it had strong endurance and fast speed. It could travel about 800 miles a day. If it traveled day and night, it would only take 2 or 3 days to reach Heaven Luo City. However, Nie Tian was not in a hurry. After all, Tang Yuyu had just recovered from a serious illness, and Nie Yuro rarely traveled long distances. Since it was such a long journey, it would not be a bad idea to let the girls enjoy the scenery. Nie Tian also took advantage of this time to draw star souls. Although it was important for him to improve his strength, it wasn't as important as star souls. Nie Tian was currently at the 1st level of Wanxiang, but even if his strength reached the 5th level, he might not be able to fight a giant spirit realm martial artist. A giant spirit realm martial artist had a giant spirit body. This was a qualitative leap compared to a Wanxiang spirit realm martial artist. If Nie Tian fought with a giant spirit realm martial artist now, he would most likely be injured. But if he had star souls, it would be different. He could give the enemy a fatal blow at a critical moment. Nie Tian discovered that any one of the star souls on the 3rd page could match the strength of a giant spirit realm martial artist. Last time, he used 3 star souls to break Gao Jin's corpse Luo demon body. It was truly powerful. One had to know that Gao Jin was a 5th level giant spirit realm martial artist. On the other hand, Nie Tian had to nurture a sword heart as soon as possible. As long as he did so, his strength would also soar. However, a swordsman nurturing a sword heart was different from a swordsman condensing sword chi. Nurturing a sword heart not only required outstanding talent in the sword Dao, but it also required a slow accumulation of sword chi, so it couldn't be rushed. Nurturing a sword heart was like a seed germinating. Even if the sword chi was dense, it still needed a certain amount of time. Qiu Shan, have you started cultivating the dragon whale's 7 breaths art that I taught you? On the carriage, Nie Tian asked. I've already started cultivating. Xiao Shan said as he drove the carriage. "The dragon whale's 7 breaths art that Mr. taught me is truly mysterious. I only cultivated for 3 days, and I can already feel my blade heart growing. It's simply too miraculous." "Very good." Nietian nodded his head in satisfaction and said, "The dragon whale's 7 breaths art is an ancient cultivation method. It imitates the breathing rhythm of the dragon whale in the deep sea. It is extremely beneficial for swordsmen and sabers in the sword Dao. If you concentrate on cultivating in a few months, there will definitely be results." The dragon whale's 7 breaths art was an ancient cultivation method. It was classified as an auxiliary cultivation method and could greatly increase a martial artist's sword Dao realm. Generally speaking, swordsmen or sabers who cultivated the dragon whale's 7 breaths art could increase their sword Dao realm 7 times faster than ordinary people with the same talent in the sword Dao. In his previous life, Nietian cultivated the dragon whale's 7 breaths art, which was why he could become the youngest existence among the Heaven Realm's 5 great sword Dao. He saw that Xiao Shan's talent in the sword Dao was not bad, so he imparted the dragon whale's 7 breaths art to him. Moreover, the dragon whale's 7 breaths art had another use, which was to restrain one's aura and hide one's strength. The current Xiao Shan, unless it was a true element realm expert or a tier 4 alchemist, it would be very difficult for others to see through his strength. Xiao Shan's strength was too strong, so Nietian did not want others to pay attention to him. Along the way, although the journey was long, the 3 girls quarreled and got along harmoniously. They were not bored at all. 5 days later, Nietian and the others were finally not far from Heaven Luo City. They could already see Heaven Luo Mountain in the distance. A road that was several meters wide, winding like a long snake, led to Heaven Luo Mountain. In the evening, Niet Tian's carriage arrived at the foot of Heaven Luo Mountain. Get lost. At this time, on the road, a convoy of dozens of carriages came over. Majestically, the driver of the carriages shouted. Niet Tian saw that these dozens of carriages, each one was carrying a large wooden box. The carriages sunk heavily, indicating that these wooden boxes were very heavy. It should be something like ores or crystals. Every carriage was guarded by more than a dozen martial artists, and it looked like they were on high alert. Nietian did not think too much and let Xiao Shan move the carriage to the side, making way for the other party. "Country bumpkin, at least you know what's good for you." The martial artists in the convoy looked at Nietian and Xiao Shan with extremely unfriendly eyes, with an extremely contemptuous expression. Courting death. Xiao Shan stood up, wanting to flare up, but was stopped by Nietian.